The story begins with a great earthquake that shook the entire world, causing dungeons to manifest across the land. The monsters that appeared in the dungeons were unaffected by normal weapons. The only ones able to fight the monsters were those who acquired a supernatural power known as skills. By using skills to defeat the monsters, skill holders could level up and rise to unimaginable heights. These powerful individuals who inspired fear and respect became known as the Awakened. The protagonist is then introduced facing a beast, staring it down and attacking, causing severe injuries to his enemy. The system notifies a failure to copy the target's skill as he observes. The beast leaps over him, causing intense flames until someone appears to defend him, saying he shouldn't be having difficulty eliminating such an enemy. Kisaragi notices that it's the Flame Master, considered the shining star of the next generation of Awakened. The reason for this is his skill. Skills began manifesting in his select group of humans when the dungeons appeared, and they can determine someone's position and superiority as an Awakened. Kakeru tells him to stop sitting there with a stupid expression on his face and orders him to collect the magic stones. Tsukasa responds that he understands. The Flame Master's skill is considered extraordinarily powerful, allowing him to manipulate fire at will. The protagonist's skill, Copy, allows him to copy a monster's skill, but the success rate is extremely low, putting him at risk by having to approach the monster. It's a useless skill. Two boys arrive asking how long it will take to clear the dungeon and insulting him, putting him down. Kakeru tells them not to be like that, as they are comrades, and tells Kisaragi to just make the most of the crappy skill. Tsukasa is thoughtful. That's the reason for becoming an adventurer. It was to cure his little sister Mayu, his only family, from the disease she's had since birth. The elixir, an all-powerful medicine that cures any illness, is the goal until he can get his hands on it, and he can't afford to give up being an adventurer. Riku asks what their target is, and Hayato asks if they're not going to the boss room. The Flame Master replies that their target is the monster lair, and they will loot all the treasure for themselves. Still in the dungeon, a flame begins to grow more intense. It's Kakeru telling the beast to experience his flames. The protagonist observes his stats and realizes that even though they're just goblins, he can still level up if he eliminates a sufficient number of them. He mutters and thinks that the only way is by killing monsters, but he can hardly eliminate one alone. And even if he joins a group, everyone else kills them all and he gains no experience. And if that's how it will be, following them was useless. Elsewhere in the dungeon, they find treasure. The two boys run ahead while the master goes to the corner and causes an explosion, encountering a bonus room. Bonus rooms, but on the other hand, they're likely equipped with traps. And if they fall into a cruel trap, they could be eliminated instantly. One of the boys asks about the trap. Kakeru replies that it's not a problem and has a great idea. He approaches the protagonist and strikes him. Kisaragi falls to the ground and the Flame Master apologizes and strangles him, saying he will be eliminated by them. Tsukasa can't speak properly because he's out of breath. Riku asks if they're going to use the boy to trigger the traps. Hayato says that using his comrade as a test subject like that is very dark. Kakeru replies that he's just finding a way to recycle a piece of trash. The two boys hold the protagonist and kick him through the door. The Flame Master says they'll meet again if he survives. Kisaragi insults him and sits on the floor. Mana begins to move with a very strong light. Tsukasa opens his eyes looking around and asks what place this is. He gets up looking scared. A voice says that each dungeon has its own classification. Beginner, intermediate, advanced, heroic, and a final classification that no one has ever conquered before, mythical. The protagonist asks if this is a mythical rank dungeon and that a trap inside a lower level dungeon brought him here. He says he refuses and thinks that his parents were eliminated suddenly one day, and his sister is the only family left. And he says that for his sister, he refuses to be eliminated in a place like this. He moves quickly, sword in hand, about to strike the enemy, moving his hand and causing a great impact. Then Kisaragi is lying on the ground with serious injuries, and the system notifies that he failed to copy the target's skill. The beast approaches him. Tsukasa stands up and thinks of his little sister, apologizing, while his face is covered in blood. Suddenly, the stones on the ground begin to move. The protagonist looks in shock and the beast tries to hold on. A voice approaches and a person walks in, saying they would appreciate it if he were a bit more gentle with him, as he is an important guest, and welcomes him to her castle, saying it's a pleasure to meet him. Kisaragi doesn't understand much and is uncertain about who she is. The woman says he's in better shape than she expected, but assumes it's still impossible for him as he is now. She touches him and says this is her gift to him. A light is emitted, forming a circle around them. She tells him to be grateful. Tsukasa's eyes widen, and the system notifies that the skill has evolved into Imitator, and an immense amount of mana particles has been received, causing the level to advance instantly. The protagonist notices that he leveled up and his skill evolved. The woman observes him and says she will now withdraw. She walks away. Kisaragi tells her to wait as he doesn't understand what's happening. The woman tells him to use his new power to defeat her. After doing so, he will be able to leave this mythical dungeon. She disappears quickly. Meanwhile, the beast approaches again, about to attack, but Tsukasa blocks it with his sword, and the Imitator skill is activated. He holds on, and the target, Fenrir, the God-Eater, has his skill copied. The protagonist asks how to fight this beast. They stare at each other, and another notification arrives, informing that he successfully copied the target's skill. Celestial authority envelops the user's body with the power of the gods to enhance physical abilities to the maximum. He realizes that if he uses this skill, he might be able to win, but it will only last for a minute, and he'll have to choose carefully when to use it. Kisaragi moves quickly, easily dodging his opponent's attacks. thinking that his body feels light and that he should be able to react faster because his level increased. They continue fighting, and he thinks he's still surprised that he was able to copy the skill and that this new imitator skill is insane. The assurance of copying their skills after touching them is great, and he wonders what it means to experience it firsthand. However, the beast emits a strong mana, hitting him without even touching him. The system notifies that the effect of the skill limited his mobility. Tsukasa can't breathe, and another notification arrives, informing that the vigor of the Divine Wolf has been successfully copied. This skill uses the presence of the Silver Wolf to intimidate opponents, severely hindering the target's movements. The protagonist understands that experiencing means facing the skill head-on, and it almost made him cry, until he looks up in shock to see the beast approaching. He stares at it and dodges the attack. He notices the ground is destroyed and says that if it hits him, he wouldn't survive. The monster approaches with its enormous mouth trying to hit him. He dodges the attacks, thinking that he'll run out of strength at this rate, and even if there's a 100% chance to copy the skill, he'll be eliminated if he tries to endure one of its attacks. Kisaragi stares hard and activates Celestial Authority, causing a huge impact. Mist's move, and the system notifies that he successfully copied the target's skill. He observes it with a huge mana surrounding him, grabs his sword and gets into an attack position, and says that now is the time for revenge. Tsukasa makes moves, attacking and moving quickly, thinking that this is Celestial Authority, and he's full of power. And with that, he strikes his opponent and continues thinking that he can win, with 30 seconds left before the skill's effect ends. The protagonist keeps moving and attacking, thinking that he needs to defeat the enemy before time runs out. He will defeat it with a Vanargund. He attacks with the Vanargund skill, emitting a strong light, causing a huge impact and destroying everything around. He says he didn't reach this distance because of the level difference. Then, Kisaragi moves and says he will hit him directly. He strikes his enemy and approaches until he realizes it didn't work. The wolf releases a great mana from its mouth. Tsukasa watches the flames moving. He leaps, observing his opponent on the ground. He aims his sword, striking the wolf in the eyes. Then, the protagonist pulls the sword out of his enemy's eyes and on top of him watches. He raises his sword again, aims, and tries to strike him, until a voice says to stop as he's about to hit the wolf's eyes. The system notifies that Imitator was activated and successfully copied the target's skill. The woman approaches and says it was a wonderful performance. She moves her finger and says that the fight is over and that it requires a peaceful tea party. Kisaragi asks why she's doing this. The woman responds that maybe it's to eliminate time, and says that adventurers rarely go there. Even if they try, Fenrir eliminates them immediately, and she never expected to encounter someone like him. Tsukasa asks if she would hear his request. The woman replies that she would like to experience the outside world for herself, and that the outside world has a small amount of mana particles, so she can't explore freely. That's why she would like his cooperation. The protagonist responds that he understands. The woman is surprised and says she didn't expect an immediate response. Kisaragi thinks there are many uncertainties, and that he still can't trust her. But thanks to her, he was able to resist the beast, and he has a feeling that helping her would be in his best interest. He asks how exactly they would go to the outside world. The woman is surprised again, then hugs him and says he used a lot of strength, and she doesn't blame him. Tsukasa asks her name. She answers that her name is Loki, and that she looks forward to working together. Later, in another place, the protagonist is lying on a bed, not recognizing the ceiling. A voice says that he finally woke up. He asks who it is. Loki sighs and asks if he has already forgotten her. She looks at him and says he is a man without sensitivity until Kisaragi recognizes her. San tells him to stop with the honorifics and says that she thought she could enjoy the outside world, but she had been bedridden this whole time and got bored. She asks if he will make it up to her. He tells her to get off of him and that they'll sort it out later. He asks if he can hear what happened after he passed out. Loki responds that she carried him and teleported to a beginner-ranked dungeon. Tsukasa asks how she brought him to the hospital. She says that's the name of the place and that she left his unconscious body where they teleport them. An adventurer found him and brought him there. The protagonist asks why he never left the dungeon until now. San responds that it's because it's a dungeon to maintain her true form, and she needs a large amount of mana particles, as this realm has an extremely low amount of mana. She can only manifest this youthful form. She wouldn't be able to travel like this. Kisaragi says that she would be taken to the police for protection. Loki hits him. Tsukasa asks why she helped him. She answers that she wanted his cooperation. She smiles and says she'll leave the details for later. She moves her hand and the protagonist asks where she's going. San responds that she's not rude enough to intrude on any family event. She disappears quickly. Then, Kisaragi hears something and becomes alert. When he looks, he sees his sister at the door. Mayu runs to hug him and says that he's been in a coma for a week, and the doctors even said he might never wake up. Tsukasa says he had no idea he had been asleep for so long and apologizes for worrying her. His sister says she's happy he woke up. The protagonist says he's not going anywhere, as they are each other's only family. Mayu looks and smiles, saying she needs to rest. He tells her not to overdo it. His sister responds, not to worry, as she's been feeling very well lately. Kisaragi realizes that she's as energetic as ever. The goddess returns and asks if that was his sister. Tsukasa responds yes, and that she is his only family. He remembers his sister, who has been sick since birth, and all the doctors said there's no cure for her condition. That's why he's been investigating dungeons, to find the medicine that can cure all diseases. Loki says she's sorry to say this, but the disease his sister suffers from cannot be cured, even with that medicine. The protagonist is shocked to hear this. San explains that the origin of the condition is likely a dungeon curse. Although the curse results from a skill, she doesn't know exactly who would have done this, but this is the work of another mythical being, like herself. Kisaragi asks if defeating the god who cast the curse would break the curse. The goddess responds that it would. Tsukasa calls to her and says that he will defeat the god who cursed his sister, and asks if she will help him. Loki stays silent for a moment, stands up from the chair, and replies that she will help him on the way, as she's also curious to know who cursed her. The protagonist thanks her. San says they must face dungeons every day for his training, and he needs more experience. Kisaragi says he still needs to go to school. She asks what that is. Tsukasa explains that all students at the Tengetsu Academy, the school he attends, are awakened. It's a school specialized for those intending to become adventurers, and in any case, they will be a team now. She responds that she looks forward to cooperating with him. 3 days later, on a day off at the Dungeon Management Organization in Japan, a voice says they can't allow him to enter the dungeon as a solo group. The receptionist says that she could consider the level difference, and it's common that when adventuring alone, it's safer to face monsters that are at a lower level than yours. It will be balanced when facing monsters of the same level, but when fighting a high-level monster, there will be a significant increase in danger. His current level is 4, and the monsters that appear in the beginner-ranked dungeon, the Goblin Lair, are at least level 5. Even though the difference is not much, it's still the rule. The goddess finds this insolent and asks if she should turn him into minced meat. He tells her not to say such things because they agreed not to show them the true D card. His current level is 25, and the last time he entered a dungeon, he was still at level 4 and his skill was copy. The OG DJ still has that data archived, and since then, he has become level 25 with a completely different skill, which would be a huge hassle if they found out. Loki says he is very tolerant and asks if he's just lazy. She adds that it's still too early to turn back and for him to try using wordplay, as she thinks the results will be interesting. The protagonist thinks about the skill he copied earlier and remembers that activating any skill there is prohibited. He gets thoughtful and decides to try. He asks if it's possible to enter a dungeon alone, and he activates the wordplay skills. The receptionist asks to see his D card to begin processing the request. Kisaragi looks and speaks to himself, wondering if they don't know he used a skill. San replies that the activation of wordplay skills can't be detected because it's a divine skill. Tsukasa thinks he underestimated it. The goddess asks if it was his imagination, or if she felt a little disrespect. After a while, at another location, at the dungeon gate, it connects with all the dungeons, allowing free travel in and out of any dungeon they wish to visit. The scanning of the boy's D card has been confirmed, and the gate is opening. They need to proceed with caution. They observe the gate. The protagonist says that no matter which dungeon he has to conquer, or which monster he has to eliminate, if it's to break the curse on his sister, he will eliminate even a god. They enter the Goblin Lair first floor. The goddess asks what they will do now. He replies that they will find out how far they can go now. They notice something. Goblins appear. Kisaragi grabs his sword and says he will start by testing his strength against these guys. He runs toward the beast and attacks, eliminating it with a single blow. Loki says that in his current state, opponents like these are not even a challenge. Tsukasa tells him to let him be happy, and that this is the first time he's defeated a goblin on his own. San says that he's level 25, so he could handle them. The reason his level increased so much was because she granted him a large amount of mana particles. Thanks to that, he can defeat goblins he couldn't before without even breaking a sweat. He thanks her, saying he is in her debt. She replies that it was a simple task and asks what comes next. Kisaragi replies that they will continue going deeper, and the goal is to reach the boss room. They keep walking. The goddess sighs and says that this place is very boring. He asks if she expected something different. Loki responds that yes, she was expecting an emotionally intense battle to make her blood boil, but none of the monsters here can be called opponents. And she points out the male strength that deigned to show itself. They notice there are several goblins. Tsukasa moves quickly, eliminating them easily, and says that the first move leads to victory. He keeps eliminating them quickly and thinks that even against so many goblins, he can easily face them as he is now. He was worried about whether he could really fight them, but this is a walk in the park. The beasts keep approaching from various directions. The protagonist looks confidently, raises his sword with intense mana. San watches, shocked, and tells him to stop. But still, Kisaragi uses his Vanargan skill, causing an explosion. Then, the mist moves. He watches until something happens, his body surrounded by a red aura, and he falls to the ground. The goddess says that's why she told him to stop, and that this is the price of using divine techniques with a weak human body. He says this didn't happen when he used it before. Loki says it's with a human body, and that he was using celestial authority at that moment. He asks if he can't use Fenrir's skills unless he activates celestial authority. San replies yes, and that's why she now says these words, that through this, the use of celestial authority is prohibited, as well as all other skills copied from Fenrir. The sealed skills are unavailable. Tsukasa watches, surprised. The goddess says it's a disadvantage for him not to start trusting too much in his trump card, and it's called a trump card precisely because it should be saved for the end. The protagonist says that's why he can't stand cheating gods. After some time, they arrive at a dungeon gate and stand in front of it. The Goblin King is the final boss of the Goblin Lair, and the skill Summon Subordinate allows the summoning of goblins infinitely. She says he's capable of defeating this boss. It's a test to see if an awakened has what it takes. They observe and enter. Loki says that's the boss, and that he looks confident for a mere goblin. They look. Kisaragi grabs his sword and wonders why he should be afraid. The boss rises with its giant size and mana, summoning more goblins. And there are many of them. Tsukasa thinks that compared to Fenrir, this isn't much and he should be fine alone. The goddess thinks to ignite the flames of anger and indignation. The boss begins emitting a loud sound, along with great power. The king and the goblins go into a frenzy. The protagonist asks what she did. Loki replies that it's a test and to give his best. Kisaragi watches, startled, and smiles, saying she's a Spartan goddess. The goblins run toward him and he moves toward them. San watches and thinks that if he can't defeat these lower monsters without using celestial authority, his prospects aren't worth considering. Meanwhile, Tsukasa fights the beast with his sword. He observes the goblins and continues fighting. The beast leaps to attack him. Then, he moves quickly, cutting the monsters in half and thinks that he can no longer land a fatal blow due to the buff the goddess gave them. The boss opens its huge mouth, emitting a loud sound for a while. The protagonist says the goblins keep coming in masses because of its unique skill, Summon Subordinate. They don't stop coming, and the aura gets stronger, with more goblins being summoned. Kisaragi thinks that since the Goblin King has the Berserk status, all the goblins he summons have the same buff. Unless he defeats the king, he'll be stuck in a losing battle. In this case, he'll seal his skills so it doesn't cause problems, and to avoid using any skills. He activates wordplay, releasing several chains and trapping the boss, but the king, with its strength, breaks the chains and quickly moves toward him, trying to strike. However, Tsukasa blocks until the boss is hit. He asks what happened. Loki says he had the right idea, and it would have worked if she hadn't granted him the Berserk status, which is bad. The protagonist says, then, the king's skills weren't sealed. The boss emits a loud sound again. San says the enemy he intends to challenge is a god, and he must find a way to turn the tables in this situation. Kisaragi thinks the one who cast the curse is the boss of a mythical ranked dungeon. If he's struggling to defeat an enemy like this, he'll never be able to save anyone. The goddess asks if he can still fight. Tsukasa responds yes, of course he can, and thinks, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. He moves quickly, eliminating the goblins with a single blow. Then, he runs toward the boss watching him. The king widens his eyes and screams, emitting an aura. The protagonist says it seems he used Summon Subordinate. He drives his sword into the ground and says he'll take his skill for himself. The system notifies that plagiarism has been activated and it was successfully copied. Kisaragi calls to him and Summon Subordinate is activated, causing a large mana circle. He watches the great light until he notices something. A wolf with small paws and a small size. The wolf keeps rubbing against his leg. The goddess starts laughing. Tsukasa observes and wonders if this is the same Fenrir he faced in that mythical ranked dungeon, thinking that even though it's small, he can see the resemblance. Then, more goblins approach. The wolf also moves toward them, using its ability and burning them. The protagonist watches, surprised. The wolf wags its tail and Kisaragi pets it, asking if it will fight by his side. He continues petting it until the king approaches. Tsukasa says he'll leave the small ones to the wolf. Then, they move quickly, and so do the two. The wolf goes toward the goblins and the protagonist moves toward the boss. The king approaches and attacks, but Kisaragi manages to block with his sword and shouts, making a quick move. He observes his opponent's legs and attacks them. The king falls to the ground, emitting a sound and noticing that all the goblins have been defeated. Tsukasa looks, and with his sword in hand, strikes him, spraying blood, and calls for the wolf, signaling. Then, Fenrir attacks the monster. The protagonist jumps and strikes his enemy's head with his sword, eliminating him and watching the crystal. Loki says he was clever, but just because he defeated a dungeon boss doesn't mean he can become arrogant. Kisaragi responds that he realizes this and thinks that, being only a beginner, he still managed to complete it alone, and he will continue getting stronger, until one day, his sister can expect a little piggy. San asks what he's going to name the little one. Tsukasa thinks and says he'll name him Lufin, and thinks it's just a play on Fenrir's name. He says it's time to end the day, and they'll exchange the magic stones and buy something tasty for his sister. The goddess says she wants to eat some sweets. The receptionist asks if he cleaned the dungeon alone. The protagonist responds that yes, and here are the crystals as proof of completion, and he would like to exchange them for money. The secretary tells him to wait while she processes the request and wonders how he entered the dungeon alone while only being level 4. After a while at the same location, Kisaragi walks and says that this settles things, and it's time to go back. He looks to the side and notices the team that used him as bait in the dungeon, calling the girl to join them. Tsukasa observes the girl and thinks she is considered the number 1 awakened. Rin apologizes and says she has no interest in joining them. The protagonist says she's so tough. The girl notices him. The Flame Master's team looks and recognizes him. Hoshigana tells him to wait, and he stops, saying he didn't expect to find her there. She responds that she came to look for him, that she received a call from a receptionist she doesn't know and was told there was an awakened who entered a dungeon alone while still at level 4. She's sure he knows who she's talking about. Kisaragi thinks she's in the same class as him, and she's the number 1 student at the academy, the school for awakened ones. And combining this with her good looks, the media will be there, but to him, she's just a girl out of his reach. He continues thinking that the receptionist must have told her after the effects of wordplay wore off, and he remembers the moment he faced the receptionist and used wordplay. He thinks it was a mistake forcing his entry into the dungeon like that. The girl says that if possible, he can at least show his D card as something there can't be shown. Tsukasa looks embarrassed. Hoshi asks if he's hiding something, while the goddess in his mind says that he let the girl seduce him easily, but without thinking, he responds aloud that he's not being seduced. He immediately puts his hand over his mouth and changes the subject, saying that he just needs to show the D card. He takes the card from his pocket until the Flame Master approaches, and his group too. The protagonist looks confident. Kakeru says he heard that he made it out safely, and they say they're happy to see him safe because they didn't expect to lose one of their group members. Kisaragi looks and grumbles, irritated. The Flame Master says he'll ask the girl once more if she wants to join them. Rin doesn't answer him and asks if Tsukasa can show his D-card. Everyone looks indignant. The protagonist hands over his D-card. The girl observes that he's level 15 and says she had a hunch, and it was him, and he cleaned it alone, which is very impressive. She thinks it's natural he defeated the boss. Kisaragi thinks he updated the information on his fake D-card. Hoshi says she didn't know he had so much hidden talent. Tsukasa thinks it's all thanks to the goddess. Everyone and their team start saying it's a lie. There's no way he could complete a dungeon alone, and they bet he cheated somehow, and they'll shut up if he confesses everything. Rin asks if he's serious and says she knows it's not possible to forge a D-card. She asks the boy if he's free and calls him to make a group and they could go to a dungeon together sometime. Kun hears and gets angry, asking why she's choosing him, telling her not to let him deceive her, and calls her again so they can clear intermediate ranked dungeons. Hoshi interrupts and asks if he's not done speaking. She says the protagonist cleared a dungeon alone, unlike them. And besides, she never liked people like Kun. And the last thing, it's not like she didn't know the things he did. She remembers him mistreating Kisaragi and pushing him inside to be eliminated. The Flame Master looks furious, grabs the boy's shirt and asks if he's not slandering him to anyone. Tsukasa responds that he could make excuses or get rid of him, and wonders what he should do. Kun is about to strike, but the protagonist blocks and pushes his hand away. The master grumbles and asks if he's making him look stupid, telling him to calm down. Cake tells him to shut up and uses his flame. Then, someone moves quickly, and it's the girl who blocks the attack. Kisaragi watches her, about to be attacked. Hoshi asks if he has any idea what he's doing, and says it's forbidden to use skills outside of a dungeon. The Flame Master says it's his fault, not hers. The girl says she's still surprised, as she can still say that with her head held high. She pulls the boy. Tsukasa asks where they're going. Everyone looks on, very annoyed, as they say that the girl is his. Meanwhile, in another location, in a beginner-ranked dungeon, the Kobold Settlement is a beginner-ranked dungeon with level 15 recommended. The protagonist followed Hoshi and wonders what she expects to achieve, and if she's okay with fighting them alone. The girl responds that she's fine, and says to just watch her example first. The kobolds approach to attack. She moves, eliminating them quickly. Kisaragi watches, surprised, and the goddess is surprised by her sword. Then Rin says it's his turn now, and asks him to show what he's capable of. He moves quickly with his sword and quickly steps back. Hoshi tells him to stay on guard as kobolds are different from goblins, and there are two ways to defeat an enemy with a shield. You can break the shield by force. She watches him. He moves quickly, dodging. The girl tells him to use a feint to get past them. Tsukasa stares intently and decapitates the kobold. Rin thinks he's better than she thought, and maybe she'll really invite him. She says he did a good job, and since he did, she'll let him handle the big one. The test is in front of the boss room, the mini-boss. Then, they observe, and the kobold general approaches along with the kobolds. They begin by defeating the followers. The two fight the kobolds easily, until the general tries to strike them, but they dodge, stepping back. They observe and realize there are more followers, and it's not worth eliminating them. Hoshi asks what he wants to do in this situation. The protagonist says to eliminate the smaller ones first, and then focus on the main threat. The girl says to put the plan into action. Then, they quickly defeat the followers. Kisaragi attacks and asks if her guild is okay with her invading the dungeon with him. Hoshi responds yes and says she intends to leave this guild anyway. He tries to say something, but she tells him to save the conversation for later and end it. They approach the general to attack. Tsukasa strikes him in the stomach with his sword. The girl says she will follow, but more followers appear, trying to strike them. They step back and Hoshi gets irritated, saying that as if dealing with everything wasn't annoying enough. She begins attacking the followers and asks what's his problem, if he wants to start a guild with her. And she'll have to keep making teams. She'll do it alone. The protagonist asks if she's really going to leave the guild and thinks she'll leave Resplendor Sanguineo, the largest guild that exists, like this. The girl responds yes, and that even though the guild has benefits, it's more problematic than beneficial. And just thinking about it makes her furious. And she's going to use these guys to relieve her stress. She says her skill has a wide range and it weakens a little against a single target, and that the stars may hear her and rain down on them. A mana is emitted, causing several intense flame attacks. Kisaragi says that this is the real power of the young number one. Then Hoshi says she feels refreshed and only the boss room is left now, but they'll take a break. They sit on a stone. She asks if he's heard about the great hero before. He asks if it's not the first adventurer in Japan to clear a heroic ranked dungeon. The girl says his name is Michinaga, but it's the old name, and after he married, he changed his surname to Hoshigane. And this sword was something he gave, and her grandfather always told all kinds of stories about the dangerous journeys he made with his companions to explore the world free from anyone and anything. And she wants to experience that kind of fairy tale adventure too. She watches him. She continues saying that's why she plans to start her own guild in the near future, and she'll be able to borrow his strength when the time comes. Tsukasa says it's fine having him, so he'd be happy. Hoshi says to go to the boss room. After some time, they arrive at the boss room. Todo and his group are there, saying they took too long. Cake says he's been waiting for the girl and the piece of trash. The protagonist looks irritated. The girl asks what he's doing there. The Flame Master asks if it's not obvious that he's there to help his irreplaceable friends. Kisaragi thinks it's pointless coming from him. Hoshi observes. Todo says he came to make sure his friends don't do anything rash, and his father even provided them with new equipment as requested. The girl asks if he's going to challenge the boss or not. Since they are the first to arrive, they also get to serve themselves first. The right belongs to them, and although she hates letting them have it, the right to challenge the boss goes to the group that arrives first at his room. It's an unwritten rule among adventurers. Kun says he can bet he will and will prove he's serious about aiming for the top, and they'll see his true glory in action, and that the idiot is just watching them. Hoshi says they'll just watch and see what they've got. Meanwhile, the goddess is watching them on television. She gets irritated and says that this guy has the nerve to mock them. The Kobold King, the boss of the seats, and besides having the same skill as the Goblin King, summon subordinate, he also has a powerful skill called Thunderblade. The three face the king and attack with flames, burning the king. Cake asks if she liked what she saw because this is his power. Loki orders the king to fill with madness and become a tyrant who will bring destruction to the world. Tsukasa watches, and the king rises stronger, emitting a loud sound and leveling up. The master releases flames, but the boss keeps approaching and attacks him. He moves his sword, throwing him away. Hoshi asks what happened. In his thoughts, the protagonist asks his goddess what this means. San replies that it should be obvious, and this is the punishment for getting in their way. Kun tries to run, telling the king to stay away from him. The boss moves, trying to hit him with the sword, but the girl steps in and blocks the attack, even mocking him. The goddess asks if he's going to stay still, as she'll be in danger like this. The boss looks irritated. Someone steps on his mouth. Kisaragi jumps and calls for the girl, telling her to grab him. Tadu and the others need to get out of there, and he'll defeat them. The Flame Master says there's no way a piece of trash like him can defeat this. They watch, and Hoshi trusts him, saying she'll leave it to him, but not to overexert himself. Tsukasa says to his goddess that he'd like her to tone down that kind of trick and calls Lufin. Kake asks what the hell that thing is. The girl says it's cute. The protagonist says to make it happen, so the wolf can take care of the kobolds. Then, Lufin runs toward them. Kisaragi fights with the king, but his enemy throws him away. He holds on and jumps, attacking his opponent and spilling blood, but he thinks it's too shallow. The king screams. Tsukasa says he successfully copied the target's skill. Thunderblade envelops the user's weapon in pulsating lightning, increasing strength and attack speed. Those watching get worried. The protagonist watches his enemy and says to his wolf to go. Lufin moves, using his ability and attacking him. However, the boss watches and starts shouting. Kisaragi raises his sword and says, "Let the thunder roar," and Thunderblade was activated. And the second effect is to harness the power of lightning to unleash an attack that stuns any target hit. He moves quickly toward his opponent. He strikes him and says that this is the end. He watches as a very strong light is emitted, and the boss is eliminated. Hoshi watches, surprised. Tsukasa, with the crystal in hand, says it's over. The girl says it was a good job and wonders who he really is. Elsewhere, Loki asks if he really needs to go to school, as entering a dungeon would be a better use of his time. The protagonist responds that he has to go to school to enter dungeons, and there is a lot of information about portals at school, which might help him find clues about who placed the curse on his sister. San says that going into dungeons would be the best way to get stronger, and he can do whatever he wants, as it seems there's something interesting in the Academy's shop, and she's going to enjoy the show. Meanwhile, at the Academy on the second floor, Kisaragi enters the room and people look at him, saying they thought he had been eliminated and asking how much longer he's going to keep trying to be an adventurer. Tsukasa thinks it seems he was considered eliminated until he notices his partner approaching. Hoshi thanks him for the previous day. The protagonist says he should be the one thanking her for the lesson she gave. The girl asks what he thinks about the next dungeon being the dwelling of the eliminated. He thinks he still doesn't know Kisaragi's true strength and will find out his secrets and that she must suspect him, and he shouldn't be so flashy using his skills in front of her. The students are a bit confused about the best in the class being kind to the failure. Meanwhile, the two continue talking and the girl asks if he's free today, as they could go after school. Then, someone enters the room. It's Cake. He looks furious and asks how the boy has the nerve to show up there. Hoshi defends her partner and the two stare at each other. Kisaragi thinks he hopes this doesn't turn into another hassle. The Flame Master calls him to fight and says he'll expose the lies for everyone to see. Tsukasa wonders why. The goddess smiles. Kak asks if he really cleared a dungeon alone and if he's going to back down. The protagonist responds no and accepts the challenge. He thinks he doesn't want to stand out, and on top of that, it's a hassle. Loki says to ease his boredom, he should tell them to bring their friends too, especially since he disrupted the last dungeon. Kisaragi thinks it would be a pain if something like that happened again. And maybe she's right, and it's better to resolve things here. He says he'll fight, and they can bring their friends too because he's going to take all of them down and doesn't want to hear excuses when they lose. The Flame Master gets even more irritated. The goddess says there's no fun in a simple and old fight and asks what he thinks about a bet. However, Tsukasa says that if he wins, he'll let his partner leave the guild and make the OGDJ approve the registration of her new guild, as the OGDJ director is his father and has the authority to do so. And beyond everything, her dream of going further. Hoshi gets embarrassed. Cake, still angry, insults him. After a while, at the academy and in the training field, the protagonist says that whoever falls or surrenders first loses. Tado agrees and says he'll lose anyway. They stare at each other and Cake releases flames. Kisaragi blocks while Riku also approaches to attack, but ends up striking the ground, saying to stop dodging. Then, Hayato tries to hit him with a skill, emitting mana, but Tsukasa blocks it too. The Flame Master says he's going to burn him until he's crispy. He moves his finger using Firestorm. Hoshi looks concerned. Kun says that once a failure, always a failure, and bets he'll regret this in life after it's all over. The protagonist appears unscathed and asks who said he was eliminated, activating his plagiarism skill, Herculean strength, and lightning. Meanwhile, Loki is watching and asks if this enemy thinks his weak flames can defeat him. telling him not to lose now. They approach to attack. Riku gets close, about to land a punch. However, Kisaragi blocks easily. Everyone looks surprised. He strikes his opponent, moves quickly, shifting his legs, and strikes again, throwing him far. Cake insults him. Tsukasa says to finish this. Todo watches and attacks with his flames all over the place. The protagonist blocks them easily and watches. The people in the audience ask if he wasn't supposed to be weak. Hoshi thinks this is a walk in the park for him. Kisaragi asks if his opponent is already giving up. He watches his enemy insulting him again and says he shouldn't curse so much. Cake continues taunting him. Tsukasa tells him to stop talking and come at him. Hayato attacks with his skill, but the protagonist dodges and gets close to him, telling him to go to hell in his place, attacking him with lightning. Then he approaches the master. Kun thinks the boy's skill allows him to copy others' skills, so he copied the lightning skill. But besides having a low success rate, he can only use the skill once before it disappears. And his luck is about to run out and says he'll show the difference between their skills. San laughs and says the guy still thinks he can win. Kisaragi says he wants to keep the fact that his skill evolved a secret. Unlike plagiarism, skills copied with copy can only be used once, and that's why he'll refrain from using Herculean strength or lightning again. However, the painful traces of his past will separate them here and now. Cake tells him not to get arrogant just because he won by chance. Tsukasa says it's okay to run if he's scared. The Flame Master says that his tongue will be cut right from his mouth and moves to attack with his sword. The attacks clash. The protagonist watches his opponent attacking with flames, causing an explosion. Hoshi gets worried about her partner. Kake likes the attack he just used. Kisaragi emerges from the mist and asks if he didn't try the same thing before, and why he didn't learn a new trick. His opponent tries to say something, but he interrupts and says his skill didn't hit him. Kun says he hit him, and there was no way to avoid that. Tsukasa says, except that his explosion wasn't caused by his flames, but by his own. The Flame Master, irritated, wonders if he copied his skill. And it was then, and thinks that his skill hardly ever worked until now. The protagonist says it's time to end this. Then he runs toward his opponent. Cake tries to hit him with flames, several of them. Kisaragi blocks and gets closer to his enemy, trying to strike him and jumping, getting closer to his opponent and attacking him again. Kun growls in pain and becomes angrier. Loki tells his partner not to move. Then the Flame Master starts being hit with no one touching him. Tsukasa uses flames. Kun realizes and wonders if he has managed to copy his skill again, saying he will surrender. The protagonist tells him not to worry, as he will make sure it doesn't eliminate him. The Flame Master is burned by the flames, kneeling on the ground. Kisaragi says he lost. Todo asks how he could lose to a failure, and keeping his promise will follow through. Then he collapses onto the ground. A few days after the duel, with the help of the OGDJ director, just like that, Tsukasa and his partner created their own guild. Hoshi calls him to go to a dungeon. The protagonist asks if it's another beginner ranked one. The girl replies no, and they will try an intermediate ranked one, the Dwelling of the Eliminated, which is the perfect start for a new journey. Kisaragi asks if she's serious and thinks the recommended level to enter the Dwelling of the Eliminated is 25 or higher, as it's home to many troublesome undead monsters. And if they drop their guard for even a second, they'll turn into eliminated meat, so they need to be careful. Hoshi asks why he looks annoyed. Tsukasa replies that it's nothing, and that he was just thinking about how they should be vigilant summoning his wolf. The girl recognizes it. The protagonist pets it and says they will rely on him. Hoshi thinks it's very cute and precious. Kisaragi asks if he wants a hug. She asks if she can. The girl hugs him and says she never gets tired of this cute feeling and that this is true happiness. Tsukasa apologizes in his thoughts. After a while, lying on grass, Hoshi asks if she can learn more about the wolf, and he answers yes, saying its name is Lufin, a familiar he summoned using a skill. The girl says that sounds like quite a useful skill and asks when and where exactly he copied it from. The goddess says she has sharp senses for a human, noticing the change in his skill. The protagonist thinks he needs to get her out of the way somehow. Kisaragi smiles and says he doesn't need to force an answer, that it's rude to snoop into others' skills and she trusts both of them. Then she asks if she can tell. Tsukasa replies that he will handle it. Hoshi says she'll be under his care, although she doesn't need protection anyway. They watch the undead soldier and she says she will break formation and that he can support her. He asks if it would be better to play it safe. The girl says not to worry, as her sword is their nemesis and she'll show what she means. Hoshi runs toward the skeletons and starts attacking them with her sword, eliminating them. Loki says that the sword she's wielding is a holy sword and can cut through undead like butter. The protagonist says that even so, things will get dangerous at this pace, and calls his wolf to help his partner. He moves, kicking one of the skeletons, throwing it away, and says she went too far. She thanks him for the support. Kisaragi says defeating them is not enough. He rips off one of their heads and uses a red aura. On another, he says they don't know when to quit, and that's kind of bad. San asks what he's doing. Tsukasa says it seems his partner is having trouble and he can't let him get exhausted, so he will help. He asks if she's going to use her skill. She replies that she hates disappointing him, but not this time, and that she'll use the sword and show a fraction of his power. She says for the holy sword to shine, causing a strong light. The protagonist asks if that's the power of the holy sword. Hoshin replies that all he did was let a little shine from the holy sword escape. It's like a wave of light, and to defeat these guys, that's enough. Then she asks if she could collect the magic stones, saying she'll stay there and watch his back with Lufin. She keeps petting it. After a while, they arrive at a gate. The goddess says it took him long enough to get there and thought she would die of boredom. The girl says they got here with plenty of energy to spare and just need to defeat the boss. Kisaragi asks how they should fight it. Hoshi replies she has an idea and they need to wait and see, and she'll knock it down with one strike. They enter the room and find several skeletons and the boss sitting on a chair. Loki says it's a spectacular sight. Tsukasa asks if he can share his strategy now. She replies that she'll wipe them out with her skill and that's all there is to it. He asks if she's joking. The girl answers she's very serious, because having a prolonged fight with this boss is a bad idea, and her skill, Necromancer Creator, is even more annoying than Summon Subordinate. Taking too long to defeat it will put them in a bad situation. Necromancer Creator, a skill that allows the user to freely create undead, is one of the strongest among all summoning type skills. Hoshin says her skill is fully charged and can cleanly eliminate all the minions as well as the boss, but it requires some time to charge and she will need his help. The protagonist responds that he understands and says he and Lufin will buy time and not to mess things up. The girl asks who he thinks he's talking to and says she'll finish this without any problems. Kisaragi uses flames and burns the skeletons along with the wolf. The goddess says that those lowlifes were summoned with the boss's skill, and they will disappear after taking a certain amount of damage. And in this world, simple is best. Tsukasa raises his sword and says, "Let the thunder strike his enemies." He moves quickly with the sword in hand. Someone blocks him and they are the boss's guards who push him away. Then, the wolf approaches with its attack and strikes, causing a large explosion. Mist moves. The king watches with his terrifying eyes and emits an intense aura, summoning more skeletons and an even stronger aura. The protagonist asks if this is part of his skill. Loki says she assumes he opted for quality over quantity, and his brain isn't too bad for a corpse. He thinks this is no laughing matter, and to say the least, this situation is very bad. San asks who the real enemy is that they need to defeat, and if it's this mere undead lord. Says he doesn't think so. Kisaragi holds his sword and says he can do this, just to watch. The goddess responds that she understands and that he can enjoy himself. Tsukasa looks and thinks that recklessly using his skills on this won't work. He moves his hand, emitting fire at the boss's guards. Loki says he condensed the flames before releasing them, and that wasn't bad at all. The protagonist thinks this is a skill that manipulates flames. Some of them fall to the ground and the monsters begin to tremble. Kisaragi says their fear is his ruin. He calls for his partner. Hoshi thanks him and begins to use her skills. Mirrored Image, Paradise, Champion's Banquet, and Inverted Earth. Tir Nanog. It is said that if a skill's power can be influenced by the user's mental image, it takes time and leaves defenses open. But the power difference may be worth the risk. Tsukasa is impressed and says it's amazing. The goddess says that word sums everything up. He says this is the power of the number 1 in the awakened generation. The girl replies that the mission was completed and it was easy thanks to him. Loki says all he did was buy time. Hoshi says they should return because she prefers not to stay any longer. San says he should stay alert because it seems the fight isn't over yet. The protagonist is startled until he looks back and widens his eyes upon seeing a giant skeleton, an archdemon. The girl asks why an advanced rank is there. The monster walks toward them. Hoshi tells her partner to go to her. Kisaragi notices she has a teleportation stone in her hand, which can instantly transport them to the dungeon gate in case of emergency. He runs toward her thinking it is a valuable item, and using it is their only option. Then, as they enter, the girl uses it but realizes it isn't working. She gets scared. Someone smiles and they watch the monster approaching. Tsukasa draws his sword and says there's no choice but to fight. They observe, and Hoshi agrees. The protagonist wonders if this is the work of his goddess. Loki asks how cruel he thinks the goddess is and says that even as a mentor, she would never cause an unpleasant surprise. But someone did this deliberately and they have some courage. He wonders if they should find a way to defeat this thing on their own. She replies that it seems so. The girl asks if he's okay. Kisaragi replies that he is, but there's just something on his mind. She responds that he's distracted at times like this, which is serenity. He says, I wish it were. The monster gets closer and closer. Tsukasa asks how long until she can use the skill again. Hoshi replies 5 minutes. He tells her to stay in the back until the skill is ready to be used. She interrupts him, saying no, they will fight together, and asks if he's forgotten that her sword is next to her. They'll get out of this together. He tells her not to do anything risky since they'll need her skill to defeat this thing. The monster attacks. The protagonist dodges and says they are weaker, that the beast isn't taking this seriously and just wants to play with them. And when a cat corners a rat, the trapped rat will be eliminated in return. He attacks with his sword, and Lufin also uses his skill to attack together. The monster moves its hand to block. Kisaragi uses flames to attack and hits it. However, the beast remains intact. The girl approaches with her sword and strikes, leaving a cut, thinking she can do this, and her sword can pierce it. The monster tries to attack her, but she defends, saying these little sparks mean nothing. Tsukasa tells her to look. The monster approaches quickly. She blocks, but still the beast throws her far away. Hoshi spits blood while lying on the ground. She says she's fine, and that there's enough distance between them. The girl grips her sword and uses her skills, Aurora, Golden Scales, Undefeated God of War, and Holy Sword, releasing all of them. She looks intently and attacks with multiple strikes. She calls for her partner. The protagonist, with his sword, strikes it and calls for Lufin. Then, the wolf also attacks, causing an explosion. They observe and say they couldn't have done anything more perfect than this. The monster is standing, heavily wounded, and they can't believe it. They ask if it didn't work. Loki says their attacks had an effect, but it was simply healed, and all advanced rank bosses have regenerative skills. Kisaragi wonders how to defeat it. She replies it's simple. They need to deal continuous damage until the healing can't keep up, or defeat it with a single strike. He wonders if this would be impossible with his partner's skill, but they need time before it's ready to be used again. And he thinks he has a request, hoping the goddess can undo the seal of celestial authority. San asks what he's talking about and says the effects of the wordplay he used on him have long passed. Then, Tsukasa says he has an idea. Meanwhile, the monster is using its powers to attack. They look on in fear. The beast jumps, causing a great impact. The monster smiles. Smoke moves. The protagonist says this thing is very hasty, then activates celestial authority and says the snake is going to smoke. And the real fight starts now. He watches his enemy. Hoshi is curious to know what skill this is. Kisaragi says that as soon as he gives the signal, she needs to use the skill, and that's how it will count. He approaches with his sword and celestial authority and attacks, but the creature blocks and smiles. However, Tsukasa attacks and says that a cornered rat will bite the cat. Then he activates the Master of Flames, causing intense fire and attacking. The monster also uses its ability and attacks, blocking the flames. The protagonist thinks it's as he imagined from an advanced rank enemy. Even with celestial authority active, continuously launching his skills at it is not enough. He approaches with his skill toward his opponent. The beast opens its mouth, forming a circle. Kisaragi quickly dodges and attacks with her sword. The goddess reminds him that he's on a timer and his body won't hold up if he uses it again. He must finish it in a minute. Then a voice says not to move. Tsukasa activates the wordplay and realizes the creature isn't moving. Then he activates lightning along with his flames, causing a big explosion and burning his enemy. He thinks he has to keep the attack going. He says his opponent won't run until he's hit. The monster, crouched on the ground, looks around. The protagonist, unharmed, says he's here. And when he notices his enemy looking, he attacks with his sword. Hoshi realizes he's succeeding. Kisaragi thinks it's not over yet and needs more damage to ensure it will fall. The beast emits a sound and uses its black lightning skill. Tsukasa thinks this is the decisive moment and tells his partner to use the skill. She tries to say something, and he tells her to just do it and trust him. The girl says not to blame her if it hurts. Then she uses her skill, and the protagonist, with his sword and the powers within it, strikes, causing a huge impact. Hoshi asks if they did it and if her partner is okay. Smoke moves. The monster opens its eyes and rises, emitting a loud sound. The girl looks surprised and asks if this still isn't enough. The beast keeps screaming. Kisaragi uses wordplay, binding chains around his enemy. Then the system notifies that the skill Tir na Nog has been successfully copied. He uses the skill and thinks his partner's skill is strong against many enemies, but against a single target, the power is dispersed and loses some strength. In this case, he should focus on a single target. He attacks with the skill Tir na Nog, causing a huge explosion and impact. Hoshi thinks that not only did he copy her skill, but he reformatted it into a single target attack. The beast is eliminated. Tsukasa looks at the crystal, and Loki says she was worried for a moment, but he did a good job. He replies, yes. The girl says she can't believe he was able to defeat an archdemon and saved their lives. The protagonist replies that he's just glad things turned out well, and if that last attack hadn't defeated it, they would have been lost. Hoshi thinks that when she's with him, she feels like she could have the true adventure she's always desired. Meanwhile, at the OGDJ location, the receptionist congratulates them for clearing the dungeon, and the reward for the clearance has been transferred to their conversations, asking them to confirm if it was transferred. The system notifies that 1,500 OGDJ has been received as a reward for the clearance. Loki is excited to eat the delicious food portion. Kisaragi notices that he also leveled up significantly after defeating the archdemon and asks if he's sure about not reporting the archdemon. His partner replies that it's fine, as they would never believe her anyway, and tells him to share what his true skill is. Tsukasa looks shocked and thinks he can't hide it anymore. The girl says everyone calls him a failure and incompetent, and asks how exactly he fought until now. He sighs and says for her to meet him on the roof after school tomorrow, and he will tell her everything. Elsewhere, in a dungeon, an explosion occurs. The Master of Flames is angry with the protagonist until a voice approaches, asking if something good happened. Cake asks who it is and if they're looking for a fight, as he will eliminate them. A woman approaches and says that he has the vigor to say harsh words, despite being weak, and she likes that. He asks what she just called him. Kun gets angry and uses his flames to attack. The woman easily blocks it. The Master of Flames is confused, and she says that the flames are so lukewarm that he could hardly light a fire with them. But there's potential and asks if he wants power. Cake tells her to get to the point, and she replies that she can grant him the power he seeks. The power to shake the very heavens and earth and use them to fulfill one's desires. Kun asks if he will really be able to become stronger. The woman replies yes, and that he will become stronger than all of them, and he doesn't need to worry, just trust his body to her. Elsewhere, on the school rooftop, Hoshi asks what he has to say now. The goddess asks if he will really tell her. He thinks he can trust her and says it was he who called her after all. He begins to explain that it all started when he tried to sacrifice himself in the trap in the bonus room. She says that's a wild place to begin. The protagonist says the trap sent him headfirst into a mythical rank dungeon, but he met a certain person there who granted him power, and that's how he managed to survive. The girl asks about the mythical rank dungeon and says it's the highest rank there is, and no one has ever passed it. She asks what kind of power he received. Kisaragi hands over the card and says he expected this kind of reaction, and that seeing this will be the fastest way to explain. Hoshi looks at the card and asks what it means, saying that his ability should be imitated. She asks how he became a copycat and says she's never heard of anyone's ability changing. The goddess says this is the power she granted him and introduces herself. The girl is a bit confused, and Loki tells her to relax because she might be a goddess, but she's not an enemy. Hoshi asks about the word goddess. San says that, as the name implies, mythical rank dungeons are domains ruled by gods. She stares and says she is the ruler of the mythical rank dungeon, Trickstar, and that it's very boring inside the dungeon. So, in exchange for giving power, the boy is showing the outside world. Tsukasa says that's why his skill evolved. The girl says the true source of his strength lies elsewhere. Even when faced with complete despair after being betrayed by Kun, he never lost the will to fight. She asks what makes him keep going. The protagonist replies that to save his younger sister from her curse, that's why he fights. Hoshi doesn't understand much about the curse, and the goddess explains that his sister was cursed by another god, and the one who did it has a horrible personality. Kisaragi says that's why he has to keep fighting until he finds them. The girl thinks that, for his family, this is a strong motivation, and that's why she can fully trust him. She says she will help him in the journey to eliminate this god, and that she made a promise to her grandfather when she was still a child, that she would clear a mythical rank dungeon one day and fulfill the dream he never could. She asks if he forgot and says that they started a guild, just the two of them, and they will find this god and defeat him together. Tsukasa looks surprised and thanks her. Hoshi says he's being too formal and will also call him by his full name. The protagonist extends his hand to her and says he won't call her by her full name anymore. The girl says she will be under his care until Mayu looks surprised, calls out to her brother and asks who the girl is. Rin introduces herself and says she started a guild with her brother and hopes to be treated well. Kisaragi asks if her sister is feeling ill in any way. Mayu replies no, because her brother just brought home an incredibly beautiful girl and asks what's going on, as she didn't expect this day to come so soon. He tells her to calm down, as she's just his partner, not his girlfriend. The little girl starts coughing. Tsukasa gets worried. Hoshi says that's the curse placed upon her. Mayu says she thinks she got too excited. Her brother tells her she doesn't need to speak and that he will take her to bed now. His sister says she's fine and will feel better soon. He says he has to work to make dinner. Hoshi tells him to take his sister to bed. She will make the dinner, and not to worry, she'll make something delicious that will make her feel better in no time. And she says she will help him and asks what he's trying to say, wondering if he's saying he doesn't want to eat her homemade food. He replies that he would love to try her food. His sister teases him, and they laugh. The protagonist thinks he needs to get stronger soon. Several days later, he thinks it seems Kak is absent again and wonders what he's been doing. The girl approaches, saying this is the bento she made for him, and invites him to have lunch together later. Some people look. Kisaragi thanks her and says maybe they should try to be a little less noticeable, until a boy interrupts him and recognizes him. Tsukasa asks who they are. A boy with glasses says he will go with them, and he has no right to refuse. In another room, someone apologizes for calling out of nowhere. The protagonist thinks this is Cake's father, the director who approved the creation of the guild along with his partner. Rentaro says he understands how he must be feeling, but there's no need to be preventive, and he wanted to ask about the whereabouts of his son, who has been missing for several days. Kisaragi thinks that's why he hasn't been showing up at school lately, and asks if he thinks this has something to do with the disappearance. The director replies that he heard his son subjected him to a terrible treatment, so it's natural that he's on the list of suspects, and that he defeated him in a fair duel, and with that, the bonds between them should have been cut, and it would have been the end of the world. As for the dungeon, he was last seen entering it, but there are no records of his visit there, so he has already eliminated him as a suspect. Tsukasa asks why he brought him here and if he knows where he was last seen, and if he shouldn't just search for him. Rentaro says they already sent a search team, and the last dungeon his son entered was... Hoshi enters and asks if it was the intermediate level dungeon, the Infernal Jaw. The protagonist is surprised to see her and asks what she's doing there. The girl says that although his name doesn't appear in the records, the director says he wants her to take a look at this article. The employee says it's a video of the record that was recorded the previous day. The goddess also watches attentively. Rentaro says there's an eyewitness report in addition to this footage, and there are no records of his card entry. Kisaragi asks if that's possible. The director responds no, and that the reality is that this happened. Hoshi says that he sent a search team and asks if they found anything. The employee answers that the search team went, but Rentaro interrupts and says it was wiped out. The two students are surprised, and the director says the second team is still looking for him. And the last person who fought with his son was Tsukasa, and asks if he noticed anything strange at the time, and says by his look, it seems not. He replies that he didn't notice anything. Loki calls out and says they are going to get into more trouble than they imagine. He wonders if she knows something. San responds that she could feel it from the brat in the footage. He asks, feel what? The goddess replies that she could feel the presence of a god, the same one who cursed his sister. The protagonist widens his eyes and quickly stands up. They're confused. Loki says it was for a moment, but it's unmistakable. And that's the presence of another god like herself. Kisaragi closes his eyes and thinks he understands, and asks to be allowed to join the search effort. Rentaro asks what he said, and the employee says he can't do that, and that the whole search team was annihilated, and all of its members were level 30 or above. And if a rookie like him joined, it would only send him to an early grave, and he can't allow that. Tsukasa watches irritated. Hisho says he'll go along. The director disagrees. They say they found an archdemon inside the dwelling of the inhabitants, an intermediate level dungeon, and the one who defeated it was the protagonist. Rentaro asks if he defeated the advanced rank boss, and the employee can't believe it either. The receptionist says that after evaluating the magic stone they brought, it came from an archdemon. The director is surprised that a student did this, and says he will allow both of them to join the search. The employee asks if he's lost his mind. Rentaro says there can never be too many capable hands on the job, and even if they are students, and he knows it's shameful on his part to say this, but it might save his son. The two students reply that they understand and will go to the dungeon immediately. Elsewhere, the two walk. Rin asks if he could give a proper explanation. Kisaragi replies that the goddess told him that the same god who cursed his sister might be involved in this. Hisho asks if this is true. He replies that he's not sure, but if it is, the second search team has already been wiped out. The girl says that all they can do is hope that it's not their case and to go quickly before it's too late. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, many people are eliminated. The guards ask what the hell is going on, as this was supposed to be a search and rescue mission, not what it's become. A hooded man watches. The guard activates his skill to try to hit him. The hooded man moves his hand, causing flames, and asks if that's all they have, telling them to get out of his sight, causing many flames. The goddess approaches and says that his flame is pretty hot now, and to let all the hatred inside him out like this. Elsewhere in the dungeon, Loki says it's very hot. The Infernal Jaw is an intermediate level dungeon, close to being an advanced level one, with a huge jump in the level of monsters there. The protagonist says it's going to get even hotter ahead, and thinks that San can still feel the heat, even though it hasn't manifested there. The girl says she knows how he must be feeling now, but they must proceed with caution, staying on high alert. Kisaragi replies that he knows, and that if they don't hurry, she interrupts him and says he needs to calm down, that this dungeon is harder than the dwelling of the inhabitants. If he loses his cool, he'll be eliminated in an instant, until they come across a beast with dark eyes, sharp tongue, and giant size, a lizard man. Rin says to be bold but careful. He thanks her and says he'll go all out from the start. He starts fighting the beast, using his sword and trying to strike it. The enemy dodges. Then, Hisho grabs his sword and slashes the monster's belly. Next, Tsukasa uses his fire skill, causing an explosion and eliminating the beast. He says he can understand why this dungeon is closer to an advanced level. More monsters approach. The girl approaches the beasts. The protagonist uses his wordplay skill to stop the opponents from moving. The monsters freeze instantly, unable to move. Rin observes and uses her sword to attack the panther, while Kisaragi uses his skill to attack the lizard. He watches intently and keeps attacking. Then, they continue walking until they reach the mini-boss room. They are strong and hard to deal with, and they can fly. Tsukasa uses his Thunder Strike skill, emitting lightning. He observes. Loki says they might be a lesser species, but they're still wyverns. A mere shock won't be enough to bring them down. They fight the beasts. Hisho says it's a performance, using tactics even if they are just monsters. The protagonist tells everyone to start dragging them to the grass to work from there, and uses his skill to make them all fall. The beasts fall to the ground. He activates the flames and attacks them, while the girl attacks with her sword. The monster pushes her away. Then, Luffy attacks it. Kisaragi, with his sword in hand, strikes his opponent, managing to eliminate it. He looks to the side and notices another enemy trying to strike him. He quickly turns and blocks. Rin says there's no end to them, and they won't last at this pace. Tsukasa approaches the beast, jumps, and rips off its head. Hoshi watches nearby, and they come across more monsters approaching. The protagonist uses his flames to stop them. Loki says this won't do anything to enemies resistant to fire. He replies that if it's just fire, Thunderbolt is activated and tells the thunder to pass through them. The girl wonders if he stacked one skill on top of another, and it must be thanks to his own skill that he can do this. Kisaragi uses his skill to face the judgment of the stars. Rin thinks it's such a vast power and wonders if she's capable of doing this. After eliminating the beasts, they decide to continue, then they run. Hoshi says they're almost at the boss room. He asks where the search team could be. San says to be careful as she has a bad feeling about this. Luffy moves quickly, barking at a survivor. The two students go to him and notice he's still breathing, but they realize someone else is there. They look, and the survivor says this is the only one who attacked them. Tsukasa looks surprised and recognizes him, asking if it's Kake and if it's really him, because the aura surrounding him is very different. The protagonist says it's good he's still intact, and everyone is worried and thinks he still has many doubts, but they need to get out of this dungeon. The Master of Flames smiles, and a beast approaches, emitting an extremely loud sound. The two students look surprised. Someone moves. Kisaragi tells them to wait and asks where he's going until he realizes he's disappearing. Loki says it's coming. The beast approaches and attacks with the sword, asking what's going on there. After some time, still in the dungeon, the beast was eliminated. Tsukasa is thoughtful. Rin asks if he's okay. The protagonist replies that he is and asks about the search team. She replies that they are unconscious but still alive. And the biggest problem is the guy they just saw, and that was Kun. Kisaragi thinks there's no mistake, and that was something to do, and wonders where he went. Loki says he's in the boss room and what they saw was just a ghost. His real body was in the boss room the whole time, still alive, and they don't need to worry. Tsukasa places his hand on his head and says he has no idea what's going on. The girl asks what's wrong. He replies that according to San, Kake is in the boss room and asks what they should do. Hoshi thinks Kun's level is lower than the members of the search team he eliminated. Fighting them at the same time as the boss would be very dangerous. The protagonist says they're going to the boss room and that she should go back and call for reinforcements. Rin tells him to wait as it's too dangerous. no matter how much he looks. Kisaragi agrees and says that even so, they can't waste this opportunity. The girl remembers his sick sister and says she understands, and in that case, she'll go with him and won't let him enter dangerous territory alone. He asks what they'll do with the search team members or the request for reinforcements. A voice says reinforcements can be called. It's the survivor, and he says not to worry about them, just about the enemy ahead. Hoshi hands the survivor the teleportation object. The survivor asks if she's sure. She replies that these are unforeseen circumstances and not to worry about it, and that this is a spare. The guard observes and apologizes, saying he's in debt. He teleports away. Tsukasa asks if she really needed to lie and say it was a spare. She replies that he wouldn't have accepted it otherwise, and there's no reason to worry, and asks if they're going to start. He answers yes. They open the gate and come face to face with the salamander and Cake and tells him to take off his hood. The Master of Flames smiles and removes it. The protagonist says he's a completely different person. Loki tells them not to lower their guard and that this won't be as quick as his duel. Kisaragi thinks he knows, and if necessary, he won't hold back. Rin asks how they should deal with this, and he replies that he'll take the boss and leave the task to her and Lufin. She replies that she understands and will defeat him quickly and then come back to help him. Tsukasa says to not lower their guard as this is not the Todo they know. The girl says this man is truly troublesome, and he replies that he couldn't agree more. The beast moves, approaching them. They don't retreat, and also go forward with their swords, causing an impact. The protagonist attacks his opponent. Hoshi says she'll clear up a doubt just for precaution and asks if there's any chance he'll come back with them quietly. Cake activates his flame ability, and she says she'll take that as a no. And in that case, she won't hold back and will crush him with all her strength, and they can talk about what happened afterward. Kun attacks with his flames, but they dodge, and Lufin attacks him. Rin, with her sword in hand, strikes him, causing wounds, and says it's not over yet. The Master of Flames smiles, causing an extremely intense aura around him and strong winds, about to attack. But from the other side, flames approach Cake. The girl looks to the side and realizes it's her partner, asking if he's already defeated the boss. Kisaragi replies that no, and that he's far from it. The beast emits an extremely loud sound. San says it seems her intuition was right and tells them to get ready, and that the power is unreliable, identical to the one that cursed his sister. He wonders if this isn't just another one of her jokes. She replies that it's not and tells them to defeat the enemy ahead with all their strength and not think about the consequences or they'll be eliminated. Tsukasa replies that he'll give it his all. Rin asks how they should fight and suggests focusing on both targets. The MC agrees and says that the way they are now, it's too risky to split their firepower. The girl asks what he means by that. He replies that this dark aura is the same power that cursed his sister. Hisho says that means they fought against a god's servants. Kisaragi responds yes, and that's why he won't hold back. They're going to blow it away with a bang. She replies that she understands and will take it seriously. She activates her ability, Mirror Image, Paradise, Feast of Champions, and Land of the Eternally Young. Maximum output, Tyr Nanog. Causing a massive explosion, Tsukasa tells Lufin that they're next, until the Flame Master approaches, laughing and trying to strike, but he blocks. Then Lufin heads toward the enemy, but Cake blocks. The MC tells him to get out of there and activates his ability, Thunderbolt, attacking his opponent and sending him flying. He looks to the side where his partner is, and she is using the Sacred Sword's release to attack the beast. She says to leave it to her that she'll defeat the boss in a single strike, until Todo approaches her. The two students look surprised. Rin blocks his attack, but the Flame Master keeps attacking, until he activates his ability, the Flame Master, attacking with multiple blows. She tries to defend herself, but ends up getting hit. Kun laughs and tells her to burn. A light is emitted, causing an explosion. Kisaragi gets worried seeing his partner severely injured. She apologizes and says she let her guard down. He runs toward her and asks if she's okay, and she replies yes, but she can't fight anymore. Tsukasa tells her to just rest a bit and leave the rest to him, and orders Lufin to take care of her because 1 minute is all he needs. He emits an extremely powerful aura around himself and says, here goes. He heads toward the beast, thinking he doesn't know how long this will last. Then the MC says not to move, using his wordplay skill, and meanwhile hits Cake, pushing him far away. The Flame Master begins to attack. Kisaragi also attacks, causing an explosion. He approaches. The two exchange blows and attack at the same time until he realizes attacks are coming from behind. Then Tsukasa activates his Thundering Blade ability along with the Thunder's Roar. Kun looks scared until he gets hit. The MC thinks that now that he's acting weird, this is his chance, and uses the wordplay again to make his opponent sleep, until Kake falls to the ground and sleeps, and the beast emits a sound. And Kisaragi realizes that 45 seconds are left until the Celestial Authority ends, and notes it's time to go all out. He approaches his opponent and attacks several times, then positions himself and uses the Tyr Nanog ability, quickly closing in with his sword and landing a hit. However, his sword breaks, and the monster keeps emitting sound. Tsukasa moves his hand and says this will end it all, until he notices something strange and is thrown away. He gets up and thinks the time of Celestial Authority is over, and he lost his weapon. And at this pace, it's over, until a voice says, it will help just this once. He looks to the side and sees it's San. Loki starts using his ability and tells him to use this. It's his ace up the sleeve. The MC watches, surprised. He grabs the sword and thanks him, saying that with this, he can keep fighting. The sword is covered in a very intense aura. Rin, lying on the ground, thinks she feels a power that rivals her sacred sword or even surpasses it. San says the mythical flame that consumes all creation, the ship's path, and tells him to give the enemy a taste of fire that turns even gods to ashes. Kisaragi responds that he understands and has this. He approaches the beast and attacks it, making blood fly with a chunk of the monster's body. Still holding the sword, he sees the enemy's tail and cuts it too. The beast screams. Tsukasa says this blade really is something else. Loki laughs and says yes, and it's his weapon of choice. The monster opens its mouth, emitting intense flames. The MC observes and also attacks, emitting a light and making his flames even more intense and larger, causing another explosion. Hisho says it's amazing. San says he only managed to get a third of Lyavantane's total power and still has a long way to go. The beast screams. Kisaragi jumps and yells toward the beast, releasing an extremely strong and intense flame, causing a huge explosion, destroying the surroundings and managing to eliminate the boss. The girl watches and says he really did it, while Cake is safe and well, and thinks that settles everything. Loki says that if he fought against a monster of this caliber, being able to eliminate a god is a dream within a dream. Tsukasa says he won because of her. She replies that it's better not to neglect training, it's not like she can help him all the time. Then they look surprised and frightened when they see someone approaching. The MC asks who it is. The goddess doesn't answer him and says she can't believe she's siding with a human and is speechless at how far San has fallen. Loki says she's as crafty as ever. Kisaragi is surprised and thinks that this woman is a monster in human form. Tsukasa asks if that was the one who, but he is interrupted. Vixen tells him to shut up and asks who gave him permission to speak and unleashes massive mana. San claps and says not to be so childish. She transforms into her real body and asks if he would like a fight to the end between two gods. The MC asks what is that form? Vixen says she's grown quite a bit compared to that disgusting appearance from before. She replies that the room is full of mana, still far from reaching full power, but this form is more than enough to eliminate her. The goddess finds this hilarious and asks if she plans to fight while dragging around two dead weights, and that she's tired of the insults and that she can prepare to be eliminated. Kisaragi asks if it was her who cursed his sister. Loki replies that her name is Tamano no Mei, and she is the mistress of the mythical rank dungeon, 9 Tales of Beauty, as well as the culprit who pulled the strings behind this incident, and the god who cursed his precious sister. Tsukasa grabs his sword and says he understands she's the one who hurt his sister. San says that the way he is now, he has no hope of winning against her. The MC says nothing and heads toward the goddess with his skill. He observes her and attacks, but she blocks and says it's completely powerless. She throws him away and touches him, causing heavy impacts. They become worried. Kisaragi, persistent, uses his flame skill and attacks. Vixen asks if that's the flame of the almighty skill and says in the end it was just for show. She uses her power, turning the flames back toward him, causing an explosion. The girl realizes she reflected the ability. The goddess says it's nearly impossible for a human skill to bypass her defense. Tsukasa gets up and she asks if he can still stand, and that his spirit is commendable, however. It won't be enough to defeat her with spirit alone. The MC watches, and the goddess says she now sees the adventurer she eliminated back then, and that he belongs to him. And that's why humans are interesting. He asks what she's talking about. Vixen replies that if he wants to know, he'll have to defeat her. Kisaragi runs toward her, furious. She uses her skill and attacks him again, causing a massive impact. Tsukasa coughs blood and the goddess says he's softer than cotton candy and she'll curse him just like she did his sister. And see how both suffer in agony. She begins channeling intense mana toward him. Rin pushes him and steps in front, falling to the ground. The MC runs to her and the system notifies that she was afflicted with a curse by the skill Dark Arts, and it must be removed immediately or the skill user must be defeated. Vixen says it's a beautiful display of friendship and asks if maybe it's love, and says that even if it is, it's annoying either way. He tells her to shut up. The goddess says it's a lovely bloodlust and asks why he's not angrier yet because that woman is going to be eliminated if he doesn't hurry. Someone tells her to shut up and binds her with chains. It's Loki who restrained her and says she plays too much. She attacks, causing an explosion, and walks forward saying the boy confused recklessness with courage and should let her handle it. The goddess approaches again and says surprise attacks are for cowards and imagines it suits a weakling like her. San replies that it's rich coming from a coward who thinks she's cunning and only serves to hide in the shadows. The two start laughing and then get serious and begin fighting. They exchange several moves trying to hit each other. Loki activates the chains. Vixen says she was always strange. San orders the boy and the girl to take the chance and escape. He says she was the one who hurt his sister. Loki asks if he can't see the difference in strength and says he has no chance of winning. The goddess says she couldn't have said it better. She approaches and attacks. San says she's still as fast as ever and thinks that was a bit clumsy of her. Vixen says she got weaker and asks why she doesn't finish her off. The goddess replies that it's a cheap provocation. Loki asks if she's already leaving. Vixen replies to chase her, and if he does, he'd better be ready to be eliminated. The MC says to stop playing around because he won't let her go. San holds him and says he can't defeat her the way he is now. The goddess says that if he wants to remove the curse from his sister and friend, she invites him to go to the mythical ranked dungeon. She throws a card on the ground and says he doesn't have much time, and both will be eliminated if he takes too long. Kisaragi gets very angry and Loki holds him. Tsukasa says it doesn't matter if he was eliminated trying. Then she uses her ability to make him sleep and the MC gradually calms down, stops talking, and ends up closing his eyes. San says she should have eliminated them when she had the chance and will make her regret it, calling her Tamamo no Mei. Elsewhere, Kisaragi wakes up startled and sits on the bed, asking where he is because he was in a dungeon. Loki replies it's good to see him awake. He grabs her arm furious and asks why she stopped him. She replies it's because he would have been eliminated, and she apologizes for saying this after he woke up. but there are two things he needs to know. And she asks what she wants to hear first, the good news or the bad. Meanwhile, in another hospital room, Rin has her eyes closed. They arrive there, and San says she was afflicted by Tamamo's curse when she covered him. Tsukasa remembers. Loki continues saying his sister's condition hasn't changed, but if Tamamo was telling the truth, they don't have much time. He gets angry and she says to wait because she hasn't finished talking, and there were two things he needed to know and he hasn't heard the good news. The MC asks what she means by good news. San says that nine-tailed fox, there's a way to defeat her. He says to tell him. Kisaragi says that to do so, he'll have to abandon his humanity and asks if he's prepared to do that. Tsukasa replies that he should already know the answer, and to defeat her, he'll do whatever it takes. Loki says she understands his determination. She moves her finger, a gate appears, and she tells him to follow her. The MC asks where they're going. San replies it's the majestic hall where only those chosen by the gods are allowed to enter Valhalla. It will serve as a training ground, the celestial sanctuary, an empty place. Kisaragi falls to the ground and says the air is heavy. She says she's worried about his future. A voice says she's back. She says it's been a while. Hildur says he's relieved to see her in good health. Loki says she's also happy that he's well. Hildur asks about the human and if he could be hers. She replies he's her partner and their relationship is nothing more than that, and she'd like him to train him, no matter how he manages it, until he's able to defend himself against them, leaving him under his control. Hildur asks what that means. San replies there's no need to overthink it and he can treat it as a fun break from usual duties. Hildur replies he understands, and in that case, he'll gladly accept. The MC says that's not what he promised and asks if he was lying when he called this place a training ground. Loki replies that it's not a lie. It's certainly a place for training, but it depends on how much one gains from it. And if he wants to save them, he needs to train like his life depends on it, or else he won't be able to defeat the fox. Hildur asks if he means fighting against a god. She replies that his sister and friend were affected by the fox's curse, and both will be eliminated unless he defeats it. Kisaragi says he has to get stronger for their sake and for his own, and that's why he's there. Hildur understands, and instead of treating it like a mere dinner, will offer her help to eliminate the 9 tails of purity. And it may be a bit clumsy, so he needs to be careful not to be eliminated. Tsukasa says to proceed. After some time, still in the celestial sanctuary, Hildur says his training will be simple and he must defeat her. It's a single task. The MC responds that he understands. Hildur talks about Loki's marks. She replies it would be tedious and asks if he can't just start on his own, saying that's why she doesn't like dealing with warriors. And she tells them to prepare, then to begin. The two greet each other with swords. Hildur calls him weak and asks if he really thinks he can eliminate a god like that. She hits him, raises her sword, watches him, and attacks, throwing him far away, telling him to get up because they're just getting started. Kisaragi says he's okay and asks that Lufin lend him strength. Hildur says she will train both of them and now fight like that's what this is. Tsukasa remembers his friend and sister with the curse and says he doesn't have time to fight there, and that he'll eliminate her. However, they fight, exchanging several blows until their impacts collide. Then, Lufin moves toward them. Hildur says it was good teamwork. He blocks the attack and says it's not good enough. The MC uses his flame ability. Hildur notices and blocks the flames, and when she looks to the side, the boy is there, trying to hit her. Hildur moves her hand, turning it into a weapon, and tries to strike him. Kisaragi says he couldn't get through, and his opponent asks if that's all, saying that at this rate, he won't defeat a god. Loki watches and thinks that at least this can be called a fight and supposes the boy has grown to this point, but it's time to call it. She claps and tells the boy to lower his sword, and that will be all for today. Inside the place, they're sitting around the table eating. Tsukasa says he has a question. She says she won't let him eat meat. He asks if they should really be having a peaceful meal like this, and if it wouldn't be better to keep training. Hildur arrives with more dishes and says not to be in such a hurry, to eat and rest well, and that taking a break is a form of training in itself. He replies that he doesn't have time for that. San tells him to relax because he has all the time, as spending 1 year in this training field is equivalent to a single day in his reality. The MC says not to reveal something so important like it's nothing, and that she should have told him that first. Hildur says that instead of complaining, he should get to work and prepare for the next day's training. Kisaragi sighs. Loki watches him and says he's a troublesome man. Somewhere else, she asked what he thought of the boy. The warrior replied that he doesn't know his place, and that many humans before him tried to defeat a god, and that adventurers are all fools who only seek to challenge gods to fulfill dreams and desires. That's what he always thought. However, the boy is different. He would risk his own life to defeat a god for the sake of another, and he doesn't dislike these humans, and asks if she feels the same. She replies yes, and that he certainly kept her boredom away. 3 years passed since the boy began his training. Hildur asks if he remembers the score. He replies yes. 999 battles and 0 victories. He thinks he spent 3 years there, and every time they fought, he lost them all. He falls to the ground, and the warrior says this will be their battle, and if he still can't defeat him after 1,000 times, then he's incapable of eliminating the fox, and allows him to use the celestial authority and tells him to come at him with everything he's got. The MC holds his sword and activates the skill, Celestial Authority, and says, here he goes. He attacks, landing multiple strikes. Hildur says it's still not enough and tells him to take it seriously. Kisaragi replies yes, and that he's just getting started. He activates Vanargon's ability to attack. The warrior uses pseudo-dino armament to unleash it, causing a massive surge of mana. However, he becomes confused. Tsukasa attacks his opponent again and calls for Lufin. The wolf strikes, causing a great impact. Hildur observes, the attacks are unleashed. The warrior's armor breaks and he says he did a good job, and that it was a marvelous strike full of conviction. And with that, he'll be able to face a god. The MC just watches. Hildur admits defeat and says he has become very strong in these short 3 years. Kisaragi thanks her and says he managed it because of her. Loki approaches clapping and says it was as expected from a man who saw promise. And just to keep quiet about the fact that he was captivated by the warrior at first sight, Tsukasa replies he wasn't captivated, just surprised, since it was the first time he saw her face, and that her beauty is only second to hers. San says he can understand why he fell in love and that she should take off the armor more often. She answered that she must always be ready for combat, and it's natural to wear it all the time, otherwise she wouldn't be able to proudly serve as a knight. And it's time to hunt the fox. San tells the warrior to accept it, he doesn't quite understand, and Hildur tells the boy and Lufen to come closer. She touches his head and says this is her gift and hopes he can accept it. The system notifies that the skill copy and Einherjar has been activated, and with this skill, he'll be able to transcend human limits. Next, she touches Lufen and says this will overload his body the longer it's active, so he must use it wisely. She will also give an item to be used when his master is in danger. Lufen gets excited. San asks if she remembers when he asked if he was ready to give up the ability, and this was the answer to that question. The MC says both their names and thanks them, saying that because of them, he can fight now. Loki watches and Hildur says she found a good partner. She replies he's a man she can be proud of. And it's time. She asks if they should confront the fox directly. Kisaragi replies no, and that before that he wants to see his sister and his friend because this might be the last time he sees them. After a while at the hospital, he apologizes to his partner and says he will take down the fox even if it costs his life, until his sister arrives and asks what he was doing all this time and says she heard that both were taken to the hospital and got really worried and asks if he got a bit taller or older. Tsukasa replies he's older and jokes with her. Then he says there's something he needs to tell her. After some time, at the same place, Mayu asks if he's going to the mythical level dungeon for her disease and his partner's. The MC replies that's right and that it's his fault his partner collapsed, and he's been diving into dungeons to cure her disease, and he has no choice but to go. His sister touches his hand and says she won't tell him not to go, but asks him to promise to come back no matter what. Kisaragi sighs and says he told her before he won't leave her alone, and that he'll defeat that god and will definitely return, and that she can believe and wait. He opens the letter until a circle is presented. Loki asks if he's saying they should enter. Tsukasa asks if it's not great and says he's going to challenge her there. Mayu tells him to be careful. He looks at her and smiles. Then he enters the portal. When they enter, the goddess is waiting and says he showed up without running away and she'll give him credit for that. The MC grabs his sword and tells her to cut the speeches, that he's going to eliminate her. Vixen watches and smiles, asking if he's not going to summon the wolf or intends to fight hand to hand. Kisaragi replies yes, that he himself will cut her down. The fox wishes him good pain and says he's as reckless as ever and that a mere human should know his place, and says she won't eliminate him easily, not until he begs for the suffering to end. Tsukasa says that this is his tip, that no matter how much he cries and apologizes, she will never forgive him. They stare at each other. The MC approaches with his flame ability to attack. The goddess blocks and says that he certainly speaks highly and asks if he has abandoned humanity. He responds that he has to defeat a god and will do anything if necessary, until his opponent is thrown far away. Then he attacks her with flames. Vixen thinks he is insolent. She opens her fan and tells him to know his place and attacks him. Kisaragi also attacks, causing an explosion. Then smoke moves. Loki says that Tamano's iron fan is the divine weapon Yata Mirror, and its ability nullifies and reflects skill-based attacks. Tsukasa thinks that Tamano's own skills are powerful and problematic enough, but this weapon is the real issue. The fox asks if he is thinking in the middle of battle. She attacks him with her witchcraft skill, Dance of the Thousand Blades Petals, and tells him to dance for her now. The MC runs from her ability until he realizes she is in front of him. The goddess asks if he thinks he can escape so easily. Then, an explosion happens. The MC observes. Vixen says that the petals of the Dance of the Thousand Blades petals are fire blades, created by her witchcraft, and they can burn him. Mist moves while they both attack together. Kisaragi says he thought he could last a bit longer and that the second round is about to begin. The goddess says that he is an annoying human, then attacks with her petal blades. The attacks are intense, but he manages to dodge. Vixen thinks he is fast as she can barely reach him and says that a mere human should know his place. Tsukasa grabs his sword and begins to attack, causing intense auras. The goddess realizes that her witchcraft was cut and thinks that it is impossible because he is just a human. The MC appears behind her and asks if she is thinking in the middle of the battle, saying that this is relaxed. Vixen looks back until she is hit and says that, for a human, this power is excessive, which means there must be some disadvantage, a fundamental restriction like a time limit. Kisaragi responds that she is right and that is why he is giving up on being human. Suddenly, a huge aura is emitted around his body. He activates the ability to walk beside gods and says that he bets his life that today he will eliminate her right here. The goddess asks if he has surpassed the selection of gods and thinks that is absurd. Loki says that it is not absurd. It is what he desired to defeat her. Vixen says that this is a clear intervention in favor of humanity and that it is unacceptable. San asks who said it is not allowed and who decided that helping humanity was prohibited. And if they are allowed to live or be eliminated, it is her decision. If it opposes this, even if it is a god, she will show no mercy and eliminate it. But the one who will judge her is not herself. She approaches the boy and tells him to show his determination. The MC starts to attack. The goddess says that she will crush this resolution into pieces. She also attacks. Kisaragi makes a move with his hand, emitting his ability, causing several attacks and moving quickly toward her. He tries to hit her with a strike. Then he uses his flame ability. Vixen says that even though he gained divine power, this level of flames is nothing. Tsukasa tells her to learn from experience. He attacks her with flames, then grabs his sword to attack again, causing a huge explosion. The goddess ends up being hit and, with severe wounds on her face, tells him not to regret it. She looks shocked and is hit again. Vixen groans in pain on the ground and says that it is insolence for him to dare to trample on a god and that she will never forgive him. Her mana grows stronger. The MC also prepares for the attack. They exchange intense blows for a while. The goddess becomes very angry and insults him. Kisaragi continues attacking and uses his skill Mirror Image, Paradise, Winter's Feast, and the ever-young Earth, causing a strong impact and an explosion. San asks if he realizes that it is still not over. He replies that yes. Loki tells him not to let his guard down until the end, because even a cornered rat can bite a cat. Vixen gets up even more irritated and says that such a humble being forced her to fight seriously. San approaches the boy and says that she has finally shown her true form. The system notifies that the skill of the auspicious celestial beast is being activated. The goddess says that for the crime of mocking a god, even 1,000 times until the end would be too lenient. Tsukasa asks if this is her full power and says that this means it is her true form. Loki tells him to prepare because from now on, it's the final battle. The fox attacks. The MC, with his sword in hand, also attacks with his intense skill. Vixen blocks and says that he was too slow. She hits him and repeats that he is very slow. An explosion occurs. Kisaragi, on the ground, says that this is the true power of a god. The goddess asks if he isn't going to let her win so easily. She attacks again, but he dodges. He also prepares to attack, and she asks if he doesn't realize that the attack no longer works. She attacks again. Tsukasa tries to block but ends up falling to the ground, breathing heavily. The fox says that he seems to be having quite a hard time, and that even his divine presence is fading. The MC asks if she is blind and says that the real battle starts now. He releases several flames toward his opponent, causing impacts until he is hit and thrown far away. Vixen says that he is like a bright candle in the wind, but she won't eliminate him so easily. Kisaragi summons his wolf. The goddess asks if he came running to help the master and how such a humble creature can do anything. Lufin makes a move on the ground, emitting a strong aura around him, and his collar begins to shine intensely and becomes much bigger. The fox realizes that it is the silver wolf that devours gods. Lufin opens his enormous mouth and moves toward her, attacking. Tsukasa watches the two attacking and exchanging extremely strong blows. Vixen says that a mere wolf shouldn't rush. She attacks while Lufin dodges the blows. The MC asks if he is really becoming Fenrir. Loki explains that this is his true form and that, compared to his original strength, he is still far from his full potential. And the collar that Hild gave him has a time reversal effect, allowing him to become his fully adult self in the future just once. The wolf bites his opponent. The fox screams in pain. San continues explaining that it is a forced transformation through the power of an item, and that it won't last long, and the one who will deliver the final blow will be the boy, who must not miss the opportunity. Kisaragi responds that he knows. Lufin emits a powerful aura. Vixen grumbles in pain, and the wolf still moves toward her. She says that he uses cheap tricks and attacks, causing large impacts, telling him to bathe in the never-ending flames of the divine curse. Lufin crouches, opens his mouth, and releases an enormous power, causing an explosion. The wolf ends up being injured and falls to the ground, on top of a pool of blood. Tsukasa becomes worried. Loki says that his body isn't keeping up with the power. The goddess says that it's just a mere dog trying to challenge her with borrowed strength, and that the two are more than foolish. The MC looks furious and approaches her quickly, using his flame ability. The fox says that they are all annoying and persistent. Kisaragi approaches his pet and says that he doesn't need to get up, so he can rest. Lufin watches him, and his master tells them to fight together. They rush together toward their opponent, using their skills. Vixen says that they are using the same move over and over again, and that this is her true fox magic, burning until elimination in endless petals. Tsukasa moves quickly and calls his pet. They attack, causing explosions and large impacts. The MC watches and thinks that, if this continues, they will be overwhelmed, and wonders if he should release his skill at full power and direct burn, but realizes he can't even get close with that tail in the way. The wolf walks furiously, dodging the attacks, and heads toward his opponent until he bites her. Kisaragi thanks and praises him, using his skills of prophecy, divine catastrophe, heavenly fangs, maximum production, and pure black cut. It causes a huge explosion, and he runs towards his pet until he feels a pain and thinks he can't deactivate his ability yet. Vixen stands up and says that he dared to disrespect a god and that she will never forgive him, ordering him to descend immediately to the underworld. Tsukasa moves quickly. She looks back and asks if it's a sneak attack. The MC asks if he didn't already say he would be the one to cut her. The goddess says it was very arrogant and that even though he gained divine power, he would never defeat her and that he will be eliminated under the curse of the gods. Kisaragi extends his hand, wanting her to stay still and to burn in the flames of the divine curse itself. The fox begins to scream. Tsukasa says she will be burned by her own curse. He approaches her lying on the ground and she tells him to wait. that she will remove the curse from the two girls and that he can lower his sword. The MC tells her not to be ridiculous, that she tormented his sister, his only family, and as if he would ever listen to her. Vixen smiles and asks what if she told him about the true elimination of his parents. Kisaragi asks what she's talking about. The goddess laughs and asks if he really doesn't know. He doesn't understand much, and she also says that he doesn't know his parents were adventurers and an annoying pair both to him and to themselves. Tsukasa asks how she knows. She replies that she herself eliminated them and cast a curse, telling them that if they wanted it to be lifted, they would have to sacrifice their companions, but they hesitated and suffered. They apologized while handing over their companions, and watching a tragic and ridiculous play of love and hate is her greatest pleasure. And still, when it came to his father and mother, instead of offering a sacrifice, they challenged her to protect the child that would be born. The MC asks if it could be his sister's curse. The fox answers yes, and that his sister was cursed by her before she was born, and although she must admit she never expected other children to exist. If she had given up on one, they wouldn't have to be eliminated, and asks what else could she call this but foolishness. Kisaragi thinks that his parents just lied and that they also knew his sister's illness was due to a curse. Vixen says that seeing them fight to defeat her was fun and, at the same time, annoying. He asks if that's why she eliminated them. The goddess asks if a swarm of flies buzzing around him wouldn't be annoying. Tsukasa says her name and that he will eliminate her with his own hands. The two attack at the same time. The fox asks if he forgot Loki's words and says that recovering from this level of injury is nothing for her. The MC asks what that has to do with anything and says that even if her wounds heal, her strength won't return. He jumps while attacking her. Vixen also attacks and says she doesn't need to hear things from a man who's already been eliminated. Kisaragi watches her, attacks again with his flame ability, hitting her. The goddess says that's reckless. She uses her ability, releasing several animals. Tsukasa fights against them and tells her to receive the judgment of the stars, emitting her ability, meteor shower, shining on this sacred night. It causes a huge explosion. The MC watches the animals approaching and attacking him. He is hit. Smokes move. The goddess asks if he understands the true power of his shikigami. Kisaragi responds that he now understands. He copies her ability and activates it. She watches, outraged, and asks if a mere human dares to imitate the ability of a god. Tsukasa responds that it's an eye for an eye and that he will end this once and for all. The fox says it's about time and that she's tired of seeing his face. The two stare at each other and approach to attack. He uses his ability, prophecy, divine calamity, and celestial law. Vixen also approaches with her ability and says that he will be eliminated. The MC remembers the two girls with the curse and says that with this strike, he will also end everything. He raises his sword with his ability, flames, world tree, ruin of branches, maximum yield, and pure black divine cuts. The goddess uses her ability, thousand cherry blade, blooming, and storm. The two attack together and stare at each other, continuing to attack, causing an extremely strong impact. After a while, still in the same place, smoke moves. Loki says it's over. He responds that it's not yet and that his opponent is still alive. He approaches her, lying on the ground, and asks if she's still regenerating. San says he doesn't need to worry, as she'll disappear soon and the battle is over. The fox, on the verge of the end, can't believe she lost to a human. He tells her to keep her promise and remove the curse from the two girls. Vixen says she really made a promise. She moves her hand and says that, as promised, she will remove all the curses she placed, that this victory is his, and that it's good that it wasn't too late. Kisaragi watches her. The goddess says that eliminating a god may be something he will regret one day, and that it's a pity she won't be there to see his face when that happens. He responds that that's good. He'll do whatever it takes to protect those he cares about, and even if it's a god, he'll show no mercy. The fox laughs and says she wants to see how long that will last, and that she'll be watching with great interest until she disappears from the place. Loki hugs him from behind and says it's as expected from the man she places her faith in. Tsukasa thanks her. San says he did well and that he can rest now. He responds that he will and that he's at his limit and asks what's going on as he sees a fox he can never trust, and if this is a goblin's grave, and if she was using the place as a hideout. The MC asks what she's doing. She replies that the dungeon will disappear soon, and they need to leave before, and says that he brought himself to the brink by using his abilities again. So he needs to heal his wounds and that they'll go on another adventure together. Kisaragi is embarrassed that she's hugging him, and his face is in her chest. In another place, Tsukasa is lying down and realizes it's a new place. A voice says he finally woke up and it's Loki. The MC says it's just like before. She says then he remembers. She taps his head and says he's grown a little. Kisaragi responds that it's thanks to God's rigorous training. San says this god must be exceptional, and she's talking about herself, until two girls walk through the door. Loki says they were slow and that the man they love woke up. The boy feels a little awkward. The two girls are surprised to see him. Tsukasa apologizes for making them worry. Mayu runs to him and hugs him, saying she thought he'd never wake up. The MC apologizes for always making her worry and says he's fine now. His sister smiles. Rin welcomes him back and says he saved her again. She watches him and thanks him. Kisaragi says he's sorry and that her life was in danger because of him. She responds that if she were in his place, she wouldn't be calm either, and reminds him there's something he needs to check. Tsukasa asks how his sister feels and if anything hurts. Mayu replies that she feels no pain and that this is the best she's ever felt in her life. She looks at her brother smiling and says she's so happy. Loki says that's great. Her sister thanks her too, and they talk among themselves. Hoshi says they'll go to the main topic now and asks why she doesn't tell her brother what she wants to do. The MC is curious to know. Mayu says she wants to become an adventurer to explore dungeons together. He replies that he understands how she feels, but she'll need skills to enter a dungeon. San says if it's about skills, he doesn't need to worry. Kisaragi asks what she means. She replies that her sister was exposed to Vixen's ability for a long time, and whether that's the reason or not, the fox's ability was impressed upon her. And she thinks there's a possibility she did something in her final moments. Rin says they did an exam on her at Jomo, so it's confirmed her sister acquired an ability, and for him not to make that face, because her sister is free from the curse, and to let her do what she wants, as it will help too. Tsukasa agrees. Mayu is hugging San and asks if he and the girl in his room are dating. He asks what she is saying out of nowhere since they are just friends. Hoshi agrees and says they don't have any kind of relationship yet. Mayu says it's a shame and that she would be happy if they were dating. San asks if that's her wish to make it happen and says that if she wants, she could become his older sister. The MC tells her to shut up and says there's no chance of a pillow god being part of the family. Rin asks what he's saying so suddenly. Mayu says it's a caused move. Everyone laughs and Hoshi gets embarrassed. Loki says to keep having fun. In the JDMO conference room, Guildmaster Banrai, Tsunasha Nadamasa, Guildmaster of Koketsu, Mizukagami Shizuka, Guildmaster, and Kyoshiro, Guildmaster, Rentaro thinks that he never imagined this would happen. The employee says that this concludes the report on the disappearance of the beginner-level dungeon, Goblin's Nest, which occurred last week. They talk among themselves. It has been half a century since dungeons appeared in this world. The disappearance of a dungeon is completely unprecedented. And even though it's unprecedented, at least handling hell is a good thing. Banrai says the boss instantly revives after being defeated and asks if that doesn't seem strange and says that, whatever the reason, it's something to celebrate. Saran says that a threat to humanity has been eliminated, and that's a historic achievement. That's exactly why they need to investigate. The director replies that, indeed, unprecedented? It's hard to know how to conduct an investigation. Koketsu asks if there were any adventurers inside the dungeon when it disappeared. The employee replies that there were not. Seiran says that's a stroke of luck and that if someone had been caught, who knows what would have happened. Koketsu says there are no clues, and that with that, there's no way to conduct an investigation. Banrai says he wouldn't be so sure of that as there are people who recently encountered dungeon anomalies. 2 of them, the director observes. A sound is emitted and he thinks it's a tough opponent. There was a leak of information from the search team and says to put them on the monitor. Koketsu asks if there's something wrong with her. The employee responds that these 2 individuals were inside the intermediate level dungeon among the undead and found the advanced boss Ash Demon. Seiran says an archdemon in an intermediate dungeon is alarming, but as expected from the former member of Koketsu defeating an archdemon, she has a promising future. Banrai says he's wrong and that the one who defeated the archdemon was a guy named Kisaragi. Rentaro agrees and thinks about the boy and feels sorry for that. Koketsu says the boy's name and that they need to talk to him. The MC goes down the stairs and exits through a portal, saying that it's his first time going to a dungeon alone and remembering when they asked if he was going alone. Hoshi said he didn't mind but wanted to know why. He replies that he just wanted to test something and will leave his sister behind. Meanwhile, in real time and in the same location, lightning strikes and several bats appear. Kisaragi grabs his sword and prepares to begin the strength test. The beasts approach, and he raises his sword to attack, but the monsters move away and begin to fly. 2 bats approach with weapons to attack, and Tsukasa clenches his fist using his lightning ability to strike them, causing a huge explosion. The MC thinks that, as a reminder of life after death, this is enough, and defeating Vixen has greatly increased his level, and the ability he copied has also evolved. According to Loki, eliminating a god makes this natural, but he didn't expect his power to be so heavy. After defeating them, he grabs the cores and continues walking until more bats appear, which he quickly eliminates before reaching the boss room. When he opens the door, several beasts are waiting for him. Kisaragi thought he had reached the boss room, but it's just a mid-level boss room. The monsters approach and he attacks them, wondering if this is a test of his strength. Then, a large attack is unleashed in the middle of the bats. The beasts watch, and Tsukasa uses his flame ability to attack, burning them. He then positions himself and says that choosing a high-ranking dungeon was the right decision because if it had been a mid-ranking dungeon, this attack would have been over instantly, and there's still something he wants to test. He observes the guards, crouches, and begins emitting his lightning. The guards make sword movements and look at each other. The MC stays in position, with lightning surrounding him as electricity is activated, and he also activates it to explode the dive flame, causing a huge impact. The core falls to the ground. Kisaragi moves since there's still one left and tells him not to be eliminated easily. The guard approaches with his shield. Tsukasa dodges, and with his sword in hand, cuts him in half. He picks up the cores from the ground and realizes that the boss room is underground. The MC goes down the stairs, smiling, continues walking, and says he never imagined the boss room would be underground. He wonders if the publicly available information was a lie but doesn't care, and thinks that, according to the information revealed by JDMO, the boss room should have been on the top floor, and the boss should have been the archdemon he already defeated. But it doesn't matter what it is. He just needs to defeat it. He opens the door and faces the boss sitting on top of the eliminated bats, asking if he is the boss. Then, a very bright light is emitted, growing even stronger. The boss appears in front of him and asks if he is the one who caused all this destruction. Kisaragi realizes he can't be careless and wonders if the boss can speak human language, even though he's not a god. He says he was forced to make the attack because he was hiding underground and won't blame others. The The boss approaches with his weapon and attacks. Tsukasa blocks and asks if he's not going to use the sword he drew. The boss grabs his shirt and throws him far away, causing great destruction around them. The MC notices that his opponent is very fast for such a large body. Lightning is emitted, creating a great aura. The boss watches as Kisaragi approaches, grabs his sword, and starts exchanging blows with his opponent, realizing that his adversary surpasses even Vixen in close combat. His sword emits flames around it, and he makes several moves. The boss is injured and thinks that the human is strong. He watches him and wonders if the boy is human, and if so, how many infernal battles he has survived. Tsukasa, still with his sword in hand, continues attacking and asks his opponent if this is all he's got, saying that at least he doesn't feel like he's facing a high-ranking dungeon boss, but he's fought against gods stronger than himself. The boss watches, shocked, until he's hit and thrown far away. The MC uses his flame mana and tells his opponent to burn in the divine flames and be eliminated. But the boss blocks with great force, thinking he never imagined there was a human with such power. He manages to throw the flames away and approaches, asking his identity. Kisaragi answers that he's just an ordinary human who eliminated a god. The boss says that the flames released earlier weren't the power of an ordinary human and were the same as the power of a god. He doesn't consider the difference between their strengths and asks to be eliminated. Tsukasa replies that he would like to, but he will become his copper. The boss asks what he's doing until a large circle with chains and mana is formed. The boss's body is chained from all sides. The MC wonders if he succeeded, but the chains start breaking, and the boss's mana becomes more intense. Kisaragi asks his identity, and the boss replies that he is the one who will serve as shield and sword, his sovereign. After a while in another place, the receptionist congratulates him for clearing the dungeon and gives him the reward. Tsukasa grabs his card and checks the data, looks at her, and asks if there's anything else. The receptionist apologizes and tells him to be careful because something bad may happen, but she can't explain the details, only advising him to take care. After some time, the MC opens the door to his house and his sister and partner are waiting for him. Hoshi asks if everything went well. He replies yes, and asks why she is there. Rin answers that they are celebrating his sister's debut as an adventurer. Kisaragi looks to the side and asks why Loki is passing by. The goddess replies that she worked hard to prepare his sister's first dungeon and needs words of encouragement. He says he appreciates her. She gets angry with just that word. Mayu says not to provoke her since she helped a lot. Loki runs to hug her and says she taught her how to use skills and how to fight monsters. Mayu says her teachings are very good, and even though she was scared, she managed to defeat monsters. Tsukasa notices that the two are getting along. His partner touches his shoulder and says it must be hard for him. Mayu says dinner is ready and asks for help setting the table. They reply that they understood. After a while, still in the same place, they sit around the table to eat, and Mayu talks about the first dungeon and how she managed to defeat the boss. Rin says her skill control is very good. Due to the curse, the little girl inherited the same dark art skill. According to the goddess, they will reach the same level. Loki tells him to be careful so his sister doesn't surpass him, and that divine dignity can't be seen anywhere yet. The MC thanks her. In another location, he walks with his partner and apologizes for the problems with his sister. She replies that she just wanted to help and asks about discussing the goal for the future. He agrees. Hoshi says his goal is to conquer the next mythical class dungeon and believes they should spend time preparing the foundation for it, conquering dungeons and leveling up, and also intends to increase the number of guild members. As with only the 3 of them, their combat strength is a bit weak. Kisaragi asks if his sister is already a guild member and says if it's about combat power, she has a solution, and explains that her Summon underling skill evolved, and now she can turn defeated monsters into her subordinates. Her partner says that then they don't need to increase the guild member's strength. Tsukasa comments that he also doesn't intend to reveal much about his goddess and her abilities. She agrees and says they will be selective about which monsters they want to turn into subordinates and continue dungeon cleaning. Until the MC's phone rings, he answers, and it's the director asking if he has a moment. Kisaragi asks what the problem is. Rentaro replies that the masters of the 3 great guilds are interested in him, and he should be careful. He explains that there was a meeting of some of the best adventurers in the world, Crimson, Myriad, and Azures, and they say they are capable of conquering hero-level dungeons alone. Tsukasa doesn't understand why they are after him. The director asks about the beginner dungeon that disappeared recently. He replies yes. Rentaro says that before the incident, he encountered an archdemon that shouldn't have appeared in a mid-ranked dungeon, and there was the case of the search party being exterminated, and the guild masters learned about it, and now they suspect both of them. They are involved in these 2 anomalies. The MC says this is problematic, until he widens his eyes upon seeing someone in front of him. On the phone, the director asks what's wrong. He replies that he will call back later and asks the identity of the person in front of him. The person recognizes him. Kisaragi asks how he knows his name. The person introduces himself as the Master of Myriad, Utori Kyoshiro, and says he came to meet him personally and is interested in him, and asks what he thinks about talking for a bit. Tsukasa asks if he can do something about this dangerous bloodlust. Kaio replies that his guilt is just a habit, and getting rid of it is an impossible request. He quickly approaches and attacks him with his skill. The MC blocks with his arm. Utori says he expected nothing less from someone who defeated an archdemon in a mid-ranked dungeon. Kisaragi asks again what he wants from him. Kyo asks if that's not obvious, and says he wants to test his strength. Rin says they are in the center, and someone might see them. Utori responds that guildmasters have certain privileges, and one of them is the permission to use abilities outside dungeons. The official condition is for riot suppression, but it would be a waste not to abuse their authority sometimes, and not to worry and go ahead and use the abilities. Tsukasa watches him, clenches his fist with lightning around it. Kyo looks shocked, trying to defend himself until an explosion occurs. The MC says he hopes he's satisfied now since he'll be his opponent. Utori smiles and emits a strong light, saying he will make this flashy and not to go too far east. Kisaragi says that's her hint, and the two approach each other. Kyo attacks, Tsukasa dodges, clenches his fist, and attacks. His opponent steps back and he attacks with a much stronger punch. Utori says it wasn't bad and will take things to a higher level. He disappears from the spot and quickly appears behind him. The MC realizes his enemy is getting faster. Kyo hits him quickly and throws him away. Kisaragi holds on and thinks it was as expected from a guildmaster. He's really strong. Utori wonders if he dug his punch properly and thinks about how he was fighting with entry-level dungeons not long ago. He says he just wanted to assess his strength but liked what he saw and invites him to join his guild. The two partners look surprised. Kyo says not many can fight on equal footing, and he will give him special treatment. It's not a bad deal. Tsukasa responds that he'll refuse, because he has already decided to conquer a mythical ranked dungeon with his partner. Utori laughs and asks if they're going to conquer a mythical ranked dungeon with just the two of them. Suddenly, he emits a bright light and says not to talk nonsense, and that he will eliminate them. The MC challenges him to do it. The two attack and their impacts collide. Kyo uses a lightning ball and attacks. A strong light is emitted again, causing a huge explosion and a massive impact. Kisaragi asks if he doesn't know the meaning of holding back. Utori responds that he doesn't need to hold back and the fun is just beginning. Tsukasa says this is getting problematic. The two stare at each other and begin to attack and exchange blows until someone arrives. Hoshi looks shocked seeing two people, Shizuka and Tsunasha. Kyo observes and asks what they are trying to do. The MC watches them and realizes they are strong. Utori tells them to stay out of it. Namasa asks if they can't behave once and for all. While the two are fighting, Mizuki apologizes and says she didn't want to ruin his meeting. Kisaragi responds that they are just walking around and asks if she shouldn't stop them. She responds that if they leave them alone, it will end soon. The two partners look awkwardly until the two stop fighting. Shizuka asks if they have the awareness of a guildmaster and didn't think he was this foolish. The two start exchanging insults. Mizuki says she will inform the director about the two idiots. She calls for the boy and asks if he knows about the dungeon disappearance incident and says even the smallest detail is good. Tsukasa asks why she's asking him and if she thinks he knows something. Kyo says he and the girl have already encountered dungeon anomalies twice, and it would be more irrational to assume they don't know anything. And if they are aware of both incidents, it's natural to suspect they are involved in the dungeon disappearances. Namasa asks if something comes to the girl's mind. Hoshi responds no and says it's nothing in particular and she was too busy trying not to get eliminated. Utori asks the boy, and he responds that he knows nothing. The two stare at each other. Kyo praises him for his courage and says he should join his guild. The MC reminds him that he refused before. Utori says the girl can also join the guild with no complaints. The other two guildmasters grumble and say they have plenty of complaints. Kyo says they are after the same thing. Tsunasha says they can't waste talented youths, and Shizuka says she won't give him up easily. Utori says they can settle this in a fight. Mizuki says they will settle it fairly, and whoever wins rock, paper, scissors will recruit first. They agree, so they play rock, paper, scissors. A few days later, at the Azure Storm Guild, Loki watches and says that this is impressive and that the boy climbed in peace. And Kisaragi thinks that he was just summoned by the guildmaster, and it's not like he's become important or anything. Shizuka tells him welcome to the guild, and they are happy to have him there and to take their time and enjoy. She smiles. And Loki thinks it must be hard to be so popular. Mizuki says that time is limited and wants to see his strength and wants to see him fight with her own eyes. Rin thinks that's what it's about and thought recruiting his partner was the goal. Tsukasa asks if that's her true intention. Shizuka asks if he doesn't want to know where he is now. Loki says that this woman understands things well. The MC smiles and says that he will accept her request. Hoshi looks startled and Kisaragi asks who he should fight, and if she's not going to say it's her, the subordinate tries to say something, but Mizuki orders him to be quiet and says she would love to, but it would turn into a fight to the death, and his opponent is the subordinate, and he's the ace of their elite force and asks if he's dissatisfied. Tsukasa replies that he understands and will start, meanwhile, in the waiting room of the training field. Loki says he looks extraordinary, eager for a fight, and asks what changed. The MC says that if you're going to challenge a mythical class dungeon, you can't just fight monsters all the time. She replies that this makes sense and asks what happened to his ragged clothes. He responds that it's just his uniform. The goddess says that a man who defeated a god shouldn't look so poor, and even if it's a bit late, here is the reward for eliminating the fox spirit and hopes he accepts it with gratitude. Kisaragi notices a dark mana and asks if it's new equipment, and says he will make good use of it and it's time to go. After some time in the training room, Kong confidently says he's going to win. Mizuki tells him not to lower his guard because the boy is quite strong. Kong says not to worry and will teach the boy how tough society can be and will go all out from the start. They stand face to face and the master orders them to begin. Kong strikes his weapon on the ground, Tsukasa watches, and the subordinate asks what's wrong, and if he's not going to draw his sword, The MC responds that he will test how far he can go without using it and asks if he can't eliminate him. Kong gets furious and uses his storm attack ability. Kisaragi says that's a pretty violent choice of words for a simple skill test. The subordinate smiles and moves quickly. Attacking with his ability, Tsukasa thinks that facing this head-on will be dangerous and he just needs to dodge. Kong tells him not to underestimate him. He raises his weapon and looks startled as he sees the boy approaching and hitting him. He smiles. The MC looks confused and the subordinate says he's not going to lose. Until there's an explosion. Kisaragi approaches unscathed. Kong can't believe he dodged that. Tsukasa makes a gesture with his hand and says, it's time to raise the level. He clenches his fist and attacks with his ability and says this guy is fast for his size. Lightning moves across the place and he keeps attacking. The subordinate asks if he's taking the fight seriously. He grabs his weapon and attacks. The MC draws his sword and says, that's a big accusation. He attacks with his flame ability and says he's taking it seriously. Kong says his lightning attacks don't work and a big explosion happens. The subordinate approaches with his weapon to attack. Kisaragi blocks and says it's very light. He attacks his opponent and throws him away. Kong holds on by supporting his weapon on the ground until he notices flames approaching. He uses his strength to block the attack. Tsukasa keeps attacking until he stops and says, it was about time. The subordinate says the fight isn't over yet. The MC smiles and agrees. Kong looks scared. Kisaragi says this is the end. He activates Divine Thunder. The subordinate, startled, asks if he was deliberately charging the ground with electricity. Tsukasa uses the thunder attack, burning his opponent, then approaches with his sword and says he won. After some time, Kong is carried on a stretcher. Miza can't believe she overloaded him like that and thanks him for today, saying it was impressive to watch. The MC says he learned a lot too. Shizuka says she wasn't planning on calling him today and asks if he'd like to join the Azure Guild. Kisaragi asks if she can't give him a break. Mizuki says there are hardly any adventurers who can fight Hao properly. Tsukasa asks if it's just because she was trying to eliminate him, saying that if she were serious, she wouldn't be there now. The master says Kong is the same in her guild. Few can defeat him. The MC asks if she wants him to join the Azure Guild. She answers that he has a lot of value and someone who appeared suddenly during the dungeon anomalies with strength comparable to a guildmaster, it would be unnatural not to want him as an ally, promising to offer him the best conditions and asking what he says. Kisaragi answers that no matter what she says or the conditions offered, his answer won't change, and he has no intention of joining any guild unless his partner decides to join. Shizuka watches her, and Rin says she wants to live freely without being tied down, wanting to have adventures with her grandfather, and the answer is the same as her partner's. Mizuki says the determination won't change and she won't just give up, sure that both of them feel the same way. Tsukasa remembers the two masters. The master says she had to see something interesting today and is looking forward to working together. He responds that he refuses and walks away. She watches them and says they both belong to her. They walk and comment on Shizuka. The MC looks at his phone and puts it away. His partner asks if he's okay with it. He answers that he had a bad feeling. Hoshi picks up the phone that was ringing and answers it. Namasa apologizes for calling out of nowhere and they talk on the phone. Kisaragi watches and thinks this is becoming a mess and needs to think of a way to handle it. After some time, in his room alone, he doesn't know what to do about the 3 guilds, and now he has to go to Crimson too. The only authority above a guildmaster is JDMO, and he wonders how he should speak. The MC stays silent for a moment until he grabs his phone and asks if this is what they mean by hiding in plain sight, saying he has something perfect for it. He calls someone and asks if they have a moment because he needs to discuss something. At JDMO, Kyo asks what the director is thinking. The other guildmasters are sitting, waiting for Tudu, and they think this must be about the boy. After some time, inside a room, Rentaro says the preparation took longer than expected. Uktori asks what he wants, as they are busy. The director says he is also busy because of the mess he caused and has already heard about the boy. Even for the 3 guilds, there are limits. They respond that they can't leave someone with so much talent without attention, and would like to hear the boy's opinion. The MC says they'll settle it with a match and will join the guild that wins. They want to know the terms. Tudu says it's a 4-way competition between them, a race to clear a dungeon as fast as possible, real-time attack. Kisaragi says the guild that defeats the dungeon boss first will be in, but if they win first, the master interrupts him and finishes saying that everyone stopped recruiting him. Kyo, as always, thinks this is bad and gets angry. Rentaro says that in a week, the dungeon will be advanced, and as for the participants, any number can be taken. Someone slams the table and the 2 masters say they'll make them regret it. The director says guild masters can't participate and must form parties within their guilds to see which is the strongest. Tsukasa's or theirs. Loki watches, and a voice says she really betrayed them. The goddess asks what she's talking about. A voice says she gives power to a human, and asks if she forgot the rule about not helping humans. She responds that she has no reason to obey that law. Laws made by those who seek to annihilate humanity mean nothing to her. The voice says that now they are enemies, and to start, they'll eliminate her favorite. Loki smiles and says her favorite is strong, so not to be careless and end up eliminated. The MC says there's a chance they can win. Rin says that even if they're not the masters, they'll be facing the best adventurers from the 3 guilds, with 10 from each, and asks how he plans to win against them. As if they lose, he says it's okay and has a plan, but it'll be a race against time. Hoshi observes and asks about the plan. He responds to dive into the dungeon as much as possible and increase the followers, already outnumbering them from the start, and asks if she wouldn't call that unfair. Kisaragi stands up and says they should gather their forces. A week later, the director announces that the guild competition for dungeon clearing has started. It's the Black Ants' Hell. Interference and cooperation are allowed, and the first guild to defeat the boss will win. As a precaution, all participants must equip a GPS to track their location precisely, and if any abnormalities occur, the competition will be interrupted, and the guild masters will be allowed to intervene. The masters observe, and a JDMO employee tells the participants to head to the dungeon gate, and Tudu and others to the waiting room. Rin tells her partner to do his best. Tsukasa says to leave it to him. After a while in the dungeon, he says they need to get to the boss room as quickly as possible. The MC looks to the side and says it won't be that easy. A group enters in front of him and says this is a restricted area, and if he wants to pass, he'll have to defeat them first. Kisaragi sighs and says the 3 big guilds have disappointed him. He didn't think they would resort to tricks like this, but it's within his expectations. He moves his hand and uses his follower summoning skill. Mana moves, and beasts are summoned. The group looks shocked, not understanding what's happening, and starts saying no one told them about this skill. Tsukasa orders the beast to handle them, but not eliminate them. The beasts charge toward the group and start attacking them. The group tries to defend themselves and grumbles about the skill and the monsters being pretty strong. The MC keeps walking until he hears a noise, looks back, and says he'll leave this to them. Kisaragi fights against the dungeon monsters and eliminates them, asking if he provoked them too much. A monster asks if he's okay, and he replies that he is. Tsukasa causes a huge explosion and says defeating him isn't a condition for victory. The group complains that their skill was cut off, and only a guild master could do that. The MC asks if they're taking this seriously. They reply that they are, and it's their role and they won't let him reach the boss room. Kisaragi summons a boss and they say it's just a mid-level boss and it won't be enough to stop them. Tsukasa uses his flame skill and attacks them, saying he'll leave it to the beast. He walks away, leaving the monsters to deal with them, thinking that, besides Roof, his remaining followers are genocide, and he didn't expect them to go this far with the interference. That was a miscalculation, and he wonders if he'll make it in time, until he runs into another group blocking him from getting to the boss room. The monsters say they'll handle it and stop them. The group doesn't understand why these monsters are here, but the MC manages to get past them while the beasts are fighting the group. They say they won't let them interfere with their master. Kisaragi reaches the door but notices something. Kong is facing the boss and everyone around is eliminated. The boss is terrifying and dark. The subordinate says there's no way they can win. Blood splatters while outside. The secretary says an abnormal magical reaction has been detected in the upper dungeon. Black Ants' Hell, even with an approximate estimate, it's dangerously close to myth class. The guild masters look on and Uktori starts running, saying he's going to the dungeon. And this is a mythical class reaction. Mizuk says that if they don't go now, they'll lose valuable forces. And even with the Crimson Blood, they can't afford this. Namasa observes and says no one said they wouldn't go. Rescuing the guild members and conquering a mythical class dungeon has been their long-standing ambition, and not going is not an option. Shizuka says the girl should stay there. Hoshi agrees and says that when they all arrive, it will already be over, because her partner is in that dungeon and it will end soon. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, attacks happen. The MC looks to the side and Kong is thrown against the wall. The subordinate recognizes him and tells him to run, because that thing is very strong. Kisaragi watches and thinks that this is not the original boss of the Black Ants' Hell, and is stronger than the Demon King genocide. Kong tells him to stop. Tsukasa says that talking will only make the wounds worse, and thanks to all of them, his stress is increasing, and he will take it out on that thing, and tells the creature that he doesn't know what it is, but will pay for ruining their match. He moves quickly towards the monster, dodges, and observes it. Attacking with his sword, the monster is thrown far. The two stare at each other. The MC realizes that the beast has regenerated. The monster watches him and causes an explosion. Moving quickly, Kisaragi attacks it multiple times with his sword. The monster approaches with massive mana and tries to strike him, but notices something strange. It can't hit him. Tsukasa moves immediately and strikes his opponent with several blows and taunts him, saying that soon he will understand who the real hunter is here. The monster approaches. The MC activates his ability. The beast tries to attack him, but he dodges and says it's too slow, then approaches his opponent, emitting a strong light, and attacks. The beast says the boy is much stronger than anyone who fought here before. Kisaragi orders it to kneel. The monster doesn't understand anything. Tsukasa asks about his identity, and if he is a servant of someone and who is behind him, the beast becomes furious until one of its limbs is cut off. The MC cuts it several times and says that if it doesn't answer, he can simply eliminate it, but he wants it to swear loyalty. He closes his eyes and uses his subjugation ability, then opens his eyes and the system notifies that the subjugation was successful. The monster apologizes for its earlier insolence and swears on its sword and shield. Kisaragi asks who is behind him. When the beast is about to speak, someone interrupts and says that the boy managed to make Diabolon his subordinate. Haim says he imagines that this Godslayer title is well-deserved, because if even Loki is interested in him, he can understand. Tsukasa asks if it's him who is causing all this trouble. Dahl says this is their first meeting, introduces himself, and says he is here to eliminate the one who defies the gods. Loki asks if he really wants to eliminate her favorite. The MC asks if they know each other. She replies that he's an old acquaintance and they severed ties a long time ago. Haim says that after betraying them, he still has the nerve to say that and could calm down when eliminating this guy. He quickly approaches the boy and says he is a very impatient man. Kisaragi says he is the only one who can talk and thinks that he can't go after him. Dahl wants to know what's wrong, and if that's all the boy has, He holds his sword and tries to attack, but Tsukasa dodges and asks if he really thought he could end this in one go. Haim tells him to be proud of dodging those attacks. The MC asks if her friends are always this arrogant. Loki replies that he's always been like this and they're not friends, just something opposite, and says he's an extremist who supports the destruction of humanity, and they are fundamentally incompatible. Kisaragi asks what he means by that. Doll says it's by eliminating the insolent ones who defy the gods. That's his duty, and he shouldn't mess with him. Tsukasa emits a great aura, summoning his beasts, which is a familiar summon, calling Genocide and Diabolantis, and asks if Diabolantis can also fight. He replies that yes, and that their opponent is a god, and they can't lower their guard. Haim says that in the end, it's just a turbine. The monsters charge towards the opponent to attack. Doll is faster and uses his ability to stop them from approaching and also attacks him. The other stronger beasts approach and the god asks if he forgot the blessings granted, only to now turn against them. He blocks the attack from the two monsters, breaking their weapons and grabbing his sword, making several moves and cutting them. While they are being defeated, they apologize to their master. The MC thinks that even if the familiars are defeated, they can be summoned again. But against this one, it wouldn't matter. An intense mana moves around him. Haim observes and opens a portal. Kisaragi asks if he's trying to run. Doll responds that it's a cheap provocation and that the introductions are over. His job is to bring justice to the insolent, and he will return one day, and when the time comes, he won't be able to hold back. Tsukasa says that's great. The god leaves and they watch until Loki notices something. Kyo runs up and asks if they're okay and what happened to the boss. The MC answers that he defeated him. The other masters also approach wanting to know about the boss. Utori stomps his foot on the ground and asks what really happened there, and says that depending on the answer, they may detain him. The other masters remain silent. Kisaragi thinks that he can't say it was the work of a god. Kyo wants to know what happened there. Tsukasa explains that it was like when they found an archdemon in a mid-level dungeon. An irregular boss appeared. They reply that they know, and that's why they are here, and want to know what happened with the irregular boss. The MC sighs and answers that he defeated him, and asks if there's a problem with that. Mizuki asks if he really defeated him, because they are there because there was an abnormality in that dungeon, and they detected magical power close to a mythical class boss. Namasa asks again if he defeated him. Kisaragi answers that when he arrived, Kong was already injured, so it wasn't that hard. The masters can't believe it. Kyo asks about the magic stone. He answers that when the boss was defeated, it disappeared along with the corpse and magic stone. Utori thinks that, considering it was an irregular boss, this isn't surprising. But it's hard to believe that Kong and the others could even damage it. Since no adventurer has ever fought a myth-class monster, the masters just keep watching. Tsukasa says that this was an RTA and means he won. They look irritated. In another location, Haim approaches and the pillar with a horse figure welcomes him and asks how the Godslayer was human. Doll says that it's nothing particularly remarkable. They don't pose a significant threat to them. The pillars ask about the others, and if besides the Godslayer, they are the humans, with the highest ranking in Japan, the god responds that there's nothing to worry about. The pillar says that humans are constantly evolving, and if they let their guard down, they might end up like the Ninetales, having their heads ripped off, and that they can eliminate any unstable elements. And the traitor Loki also needs to be dealt with. Haim responds that he understands. In another location, the MC is explaining how it was in the dungeon. Hoshi talks about Doll and asks if the gods can move freely outside the dungeons. Loki responds that yes, although it consumes a lot of magical power. Rin says that means the god can appear in any dungeon. The goddess says that even though he can move, he's not omnipotent and there must be a cooldown period before he can use it again. Kisaragi says that this window is their chance. Hoshi asks if that means having a preparation period. He answers that yes, and fought a little with the god, but at this rate, he doesn't think they can win because his strength is much greater than Vixen's. And to stop him, they need to become stronger. Loki says that God has no weaknesses and is a complete warrior. Rin says that they have no choice but to create their own strength and thinks that who needs to get stronger is herself. The goddess says that without considering things that will get more chaotic from now on. Tsukasa responds that he knows. Loki says to stop talking because it's time for his sister to have dinner. The MC says that the two are like sisters. Until a noise is made and it's his cell phone ringing, he answers. And it's the master saying that she has a small proposal she would like to share. After some time in the dungeon, the hero-class flautist with a mask, she thanks the two partners for being there. Hoshi asks what brings her here. Mizuki replies that she still needs to dive into dungeons sometimes to keep her body from getting rusty, but it's lonely to go alone. So she called the two of them and asks if this is a problem. Kisaragi says this is an opportunity to see the guild master in action. Shuri says that as thanks for the other day, she'll give an appropriate demonstration. Rin watches them and wonders if everything will be all right. Skeletons approach. The master grabs her weapon and stays alert. Loki finds a beautiful blade. Hoshi says it's a hero-class weapon just like her sacred sword. And the name is touched by the wind of the white world. Mizuki attacks them with her freeze skill and says that the name of this child is Snow White. Her precious partner Loki is impressed with both the sword and her strength. Tsukasa quietly says she's the master of one of the 3 great guilds, and there's no way she can be weak. Shai asks what's wrong. He replies that he was just admiring her skill. She smiles and says they will fight together from now on. MC grabs his sword and asks his partner if she can do this. Hoshi replies yes and to go. Then they start attacking the skeletons. While Rin attacks one skeleton, Another approaches from behind, but they are immediately attacked. Kisaragi orders them to stay still and he activates the wordplay, then activates his flame skill and attacks, causing an explosion. Hoshi thanks him for saving her. Tsukasa approaches asking if she's alright. She replies that yes, and next time she'll do it correctly. The master says that for the first hero-class dungeon, they're doing very well. Meanwhile, she's freezing the skeletons. MC is impressed with her power. Mizuki says to move forward because the boss room is ahead.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and like the video. Thank you.
However, at the entrance to the boss room, the flutist, a voice says that before challenging the boss, they should review the details of the dungeon boss and make a quick analysis. The dungeon boss of hero class, the flutist, is famous for his brutality. Countless adventurers have challenged him, only to be massacred. Shizuka says there are two main points to watch. First, the infinite summoning of ghost-type monsters through music. If the boss is attacked, the performance stops and the summoning ceases, so taking him down quickly is key. Second, he ambushes using spatial teleportation. Once he takes a certain amount of damage, he will use teleportation and music simultaneously, so never let your guard down. Hoshi says that if they fail to hit him during the performance, the summons will continue endlessly. Mizuki agrees and says their top priority is to stop him from playing the flute. The protagonist thinks that, as expected of a hero-class dungeon, this boss is troublesome. But if he can't beat this thing, then he'll never stand a chance against that god. His partner asks if he's okay. Kisaragi says it's no problem. Shizuka looks back and tells them to stay alert and that she's counting on them. They come face to face with the boss playing the flute, with skeletons around him. He is the hero-class dungeon boss, the level 60 flutist. Mizuki says she'll go in first and attack the boss, and the two should handle the minions. They respond that they understand. Shizuka says that's a good answer and that they should act quickly. She teleports, facing the enemy directly. The flutist plays his flute and the skeletons move toward the two. Tsukasa says they don't need to take him down all at once, but to be careful of the surroundings and avoid being surrounded. Gain says he won't be a burden and not to worry. The protagonist says he understands. The two advance together while Mizuki fights the boss. She notices two skeletons approaching from behind. Shizuka smiles upon seeing the skeletons being burned. The flutist looks surprised and says today's allies are quite capable. Mizuki raises her sword and attacks, saying it's now and to hit all at once. Kisaragi calls to his partner and says he's fine and to go ahead. The system notifies the activation of the Divine Thunder ability. Tsukasa approaches the boss from behind. The flutist looks back confused, and the protagonist says he's too slow, then attacks with flames, injuring the enemy. The boss backs off. Shizuka says well done and that the enemy won't escape. Mana is unleashed at the opponent. Mizuki uses her Ice Prison Crystal ability. The flutist thinks this human is strong, but even more disturbing is that man, there's something different about him, and he needs to be eliminated. But to do that, the two women look confused, and the boss thinks he'll eliminate that woman instead. Kisaragi appears behind him and says he knew he'd try that. The boss grits his teeth, and Tsukasa attacks him without hesitation. As he falls, the flutist wonders why and how he knew. The protagonist says his thoughts are easy to read and asks if he was trying to eliminate his partner to throw him off. How could he let that happen? Kisaragi strikes him, causing a massive impact. Lightning is released alongside flames toward the fallen enemy, and then a weapon approaches the opponent. The boss looks surprised and wonders who the hell this man is. Tsukasa walks toward his sword embedded in the enemy. An extremely intense aura is released. The protagonist activates his skill, Kamui, and says it's over, then uses the piercing Black Divine Slash Vanargand. The attack is so powerful that it also destroys everything nearby, making chunks of rock fly. The flutist says he understands. He's a godslayer. The smoke clears, and Kisaragi says he seems to have become quite famous. Shizuka says he's way too strong. Tsukasa picks up the crystal from the ground and says the dungeon has been cleared and asks if they're heading back. Mizuki replies yes and calls the girl. Rin thinks she's weak and nothing more than a burden to her partner. If her partner hadn't been there, she would have been in real danger, and she can't stay like this. She will become stronger, no matter the cost. Outside the entrance to the JDMO, Shizuka thanks them for today and says she had a lot of fun thanks to them. The protagonist responds no and thanks her, saying it was a valuable experience. Mizuki says, by the way, she was wondering if they had already decided on a guild name. Kisaragi says now that she mentions it, they've been so busy, they haven't thought about it. Shizuka says it's a good way to make a name for themselves, so they should decide soon. Tsukasa agrees and says he'll talk it over with his partner. Rin is downcast and distracted. The protagonist asks if she's okay. Hoshigane replies that she's fine and asks what they were talking about again. Kisaragi replies that it's about choosing the guild name and asks if she's sure she's okay. Rin answers that she is and that anyway, they were planning to discuss it with Mayu next time. Tsukasa tells her to wait and asks if she's also considering Mayu's opinion. Hoshigane responds that of course. Mayu is an important member of the guild. Mizuki says she's looking forward to seeing what name they'll choose and says see you around, and the protagonist calls his partner to head back as well. They walk until Rin appears in another place, empty and looks confused. A voice says she seems troubled. Someone teleports into a chair and says that as a goddess, she'll make an exception and offer her guidance. Hoshigane asks if she's Loki-san. The goddess replies that's right, and this is the first time she's revealed this form, and appearances are trivial. More importantly, she asks if Rin is wondering how to get stronger. Rin replies that, as expected of a god, she sees right through her. She doesn't want to just be protected by her partner and definitely doesn't want to be a burden. Loki says that she wants to fight alongside him no matter what and that she's brave. Very well, she will personally train her. She trained Tsukasa and Mayu, so it wouldn't be fair to leave her out, and she'll be even tougher on her than she was with her partner. Hoshigane replies that she understands. The goddess tells her to say when she's ready, and until then, to work on what she lacks. Rin looks surprised, and a voice says that distancing herself won't get her anywhere. Hoshigane pulls back, startled, and says she's fine. Just lost in thought for a moment, and seriously, it's nothing, so don't worry. The protagonist calls her, and Rin says she has something she needs to do, so he should also focus on what he needs to do. She'll catch up to him soon, and he better be ready for her. Kisaragi replies that it's all right. He thinks he also needs to get stronger, and if he wants to defeat Heimdall, he has to become even stronger. But before that, there's something he needs to confirm. The goddess is summoned, and finds it unusual that he's calling her this time. Tsukasa apologizes and says he needs to clear something up. Heimdall is a radical who wants to exterminate humanity, but what exactly does that mean? Loki replies that now that he mentions it, she never really explained. To simplify, to Heimdall and those like him, humanity is nothing more than a malignant cancer. The protagonist is surprised, and the goddess continues explaining that there are far more humans than there should be, and to ensure the world's survival, they believe humanity must be eradicated. That's Heimdall's ideology. Kisaragi asks about ensuring the world's survival. What is she talking about? The goddess says it's fine if he doesn't understand now, and she's not asking him to accept it. But never forget that countless lives rest on his shoulders. This is the path he chose. Tsukasa says that if that's the price he has to pay for eliminating a god, then he'll bear it all, down to the very last shred. Elsewhere, Rin is sitting on her bed, thinking that what she lacks is her level, her sword, her raw power, but more than anything, she barely has any experience fighting opponents stronger than herself. She says that before training with the goddess, she has to fix that and wonders how. Then she notices something and picks up her phone, saying that actually she knows the right person. Hoshi calls Mizuki and asks if she's free. She replies that she is, though she didn't expect her to reach out so soon, but it's not that surprising. Rin asks if she already knew. Shizuka replies that she had a hunch. Her expression when they left reminded her of herself, not wanting to be left behind by her companions, not wanting to be a burden, wanting to be stronger. She went through the same thing once. Hoshi says she's surprised and never thought Shizuka had gone through that. Mizuki replies that everyone goes down that path. The only ones who don't are a few rare geniuses. She then confirms the reason Rin called her and asks what she needs. Rin replies that yes, and she knows it's quite bold of her, but asks if she would train her because she wants to become strong enough to stand beside her partner as his equal. Shizuka says that normally she'd stop her and say there's no need to rush, but it's fine. She accepts. But in exchange, Rin has to come to her directly. If she's not fully committed, she won't accept. Hoshi replies of course and thanks her. Then she hangs up and tells her partner to wait. She'll catch up to him soon. At the JDMO Underground Special Training Fields, Loki says she thought they were heading to a dungeon and asks what they'll be doing today. The protagonist replies that this is preparation, so he won't have to rely on abilities, and thinks he can summon more familiars now, but they won't work against the gods. Divine Power, Einherjar, a knight who walks with the gods. Even his trump card has risks, and he says that first, he needs to grow stronger, and for that, he needs their help. The two reply that it's as he commands. Kisaragi says he's coming at them seriously, so they'd better come at him as if they were trying to kill him. The two approach to attack. In the Azure Storm Guild's underground training field, Mizuki approaches and apologizes for making her wait, saying it's time to begin. She must go at her with the intent to kill and do her best not to lose her life. Rin, with her sword in hand, replies that she understands. 10 days after the start of the training, in a hero-class dungeon, the judge of the condemned, Tsukasa eliminates the beast with a single strike. A knight in armor tries to attack from behind. The protagonist immediately decapitates him. His subordinate suggests summoning more so they can fight too, but while Kisaragi trades blows, he says not to make him repeat himself. If they want to defeat the gods, they must become stronger. That's why all of them, until he stops speaking and begins using his ability, unleashing an extremely intense power, and the enemies are defeated. Crystals fall to the ground. Tsukasa walks forward and says he's moving on. A voice says, "This is rare, a visitor after so long," and asks what brings him here. This is the boss, the judge of the condemned, King Enma. The protagonist asks if he really needs to ask. The king replies, probably not, and tells him to begin. The attacks commence, and the boss calls him to eliminate each other and strikes immediately, saying it's impressive that he blocked the attack with his blade so quickly. He's quite skilled. Kisaragi says he understands and now has a good grasp of things. He attacks, swinging his sword that releases flames. The king glares at him and the two close in together for a clash. Tsukasa continues unleashing intense flames. The boss closes his fist, blocking the attack, but the protagonist, without hesitation, tears off his hand and asks if he didn't warn him. He says he understands now and attacks again. The king gets up, dodging. Kisaragi asks if he dodged and says, well, he is a hero-class boss. The boss, heavily injured, says no way and asks if he analyzed him from the first move. Tsukasa says, instant teleportation to a marked target, ability, temporal space dodge. A troublesome skill, but if someone stays alert in all directions, it's easy to counter. The king speaks of power beyond reason and understands he is the Godslayer. The protagonist asks if he's serious and how far that rumor has spread. The boss smiles and says he'll now fight at full power, but then his arm begins to catch fire and the king, desperate, asks what that flame is. Kisaragi responds that it doesn't matter if it's cut or burned. It regenerates instantly. It's more annoying than a regular ability, so he sealed it. The boss says that's impossible. Tsukasa tells him to go ahead and heal, but he won't have time. The king is struck again and says that was his own ability and asks how. The protagonist replies that he warned him from the start, didn't he? Kisaragi recalls when he activated the mimicry ability and then copied the ability, dodge, and says he warned him and figured him out. The boss calls him a monster. Tsukasa says that's rude. The real monsters are them. He attacks again with his flames, burning him alive. The crystal falls to the ground and his subordinates say that's just like him, dominating without even using a god's ability, and ask if it was really okay not to make the king his servant. The protagonist replies that he only wanted the king's ability from the start. Besides, strong or not, he's weaker than them. Also, he's already decided who his next servant will be. At the JDMO, someone asks if he's okay. It's the secretary who says he's been challenging high-difficulty dungeons alone every day and needs to make sure he rests a bit. Kisaragi replies that he's fine. More importantly, he wants to go to another dungeon right now and asks if she can handle the procedure. The secretary asks if he even listened to what she just said. Tsukasa begs and says he needs to become stronger. The secretary replies that she understands and asks which dungeon he'll challenge next. The protagonist says to take him there. Hero Class Dungeon, Knights of the Round Table. The system notifies Hero Class Dungeon, Knight of the Round Table. Kisaragi watches attentively and asks about a boss room right at the entrance, and if he just got lucky on the roll. His subordinates say not to let their guard down. The ruler of this chamber is very powerful and ask why he chose this dungeon. Tsukasa replies that the first to clear this dungeon was the guild of Michi Nagadu Jiru, the one who came closest to defeating a god. He asks if this isn't the perfect place for a pre-battle ritual before fighting a god. He enters the Celestial Temple of Valhalla training grounds. Shizuka asks how long she plans to rest and says not to claim she's done if that was all her determination. Rin tells her not to say things like that so easily because she can still keep going and tells her to continue. Mizuki smiles and says that's great and tells her to keep going. The two charge at each other, face to face. Somewhere else, a voice says she's extremely lacking in something. Rin asks if she knows what it is. The voice answers, it's a thirst for victory, a will to survive. It's Loki, saying it's the relentless desire for strength born from excellence. She's severely lacking in all of that, but above all, she has no sense of danger. The goddess throws a sword near her and says, to get up, the break is over. Hoshi asks if she's talking about her lack of danger awareness. San says even at this very moment, if she doesn't truly believe she's about to be eliminated, and says she's coming with killing intent. If she hasn't figured it out yet, the true essence of the sacred sword is the very core of her own power. In the hero class dungeon, Knights of the Round Table, a voice says, finally, that he's been waiting for him. And it's Arthur, Lion King, Star. The protagonist asks how he knows his name. Arthur asks who he thinks he is. The subordinates say it's too dangerous to face this alone and that they'll fight too. Kisaragi says they're too noisy, all of them. The Lion King says he has loyal subordinates and tells him to go ahead. No matter how many he brings, none will match him. Tsukasa thinks he might even realize he's talking to his subordinates. This really is the boss of a high-level hero-class dungeon. Arthur says he'll say this now. In this very chamber, he's stronger than any knight Tsukasa has ever defeated. The opponent extends his hand, summoning a sword, and calls for the Godslayer to come at him with everything. The protagonist draws his sword and accepts the challenge. The two face off, clashing their weapons, generating powerful flames. Kisaragi thinks he's fast. His reaction speed is even greater than Tamamo Nome's. Could this guy be it? The Lion King says he's reading his attacks and asks if he's noticed. Hasn't he? Arthur releases several weapons toward his opponent and says that, unfortunately for him, he's absolutely right. The attack closes in. Tsukasa tries to defend but ends up being hit. The Lion King says if he keeps holding back, he'll lose his life, and tells him to face the judgment of the stars. The protagonist asks if this is Rin's. Several attacks come his way. Arthur tells him to enjoy the full strength of this supreme magic. A huge explosion occurs. The Lion King laughs. A powerful, overwhelming aura erupts around Kisaragi's body, and he says now he's finally getting serious. Just as he expected, he's hitting for real. Tsukasa attacks, but Arthur blocks it and says he can see him, and counters. The protagonist wonders if this guy is really just a hero-class boss. He stares him down. The Lion King says he froze again and attacks. Kisaragi dodges some strikes and is hit by others, saying it's too slow. Arthur says, shatter, Kalwanan. A massive mana explosion erupts, and the Lion King says his ability, star reading, allows him to see the future. He can see right through him. Surely that alone won't be enough to stop him, and he asks if he's really that weak. If he can't even beat someone like him, facing the gods is nothing but a dream. Lightning is fired at Arthur by Tsukasa, who says, so the ability is star reading. That's how he's been predicting his moves. The Lion King confirms and asks what he'll do. Escape unscathed or tuck his tail and run? What's wrong? Don't tell him he gave up and chose the end. The protagonist replies, no chance, unleashes powerful mana, and says he has no intention of dying. Not until he's eliminated all gods who dare threaten this world. Even if he can read the future, that should... Kisaragi rushes toward him. Arthur asks if he's charging straight at him. Tsukasa's eyes widen. Smoke clears from the area. Plasma splashes. The Lion King asks if he just surpassed the future. His armor is shattered into pieces, and he says he never imagined such a thing could happen. So this is the true essence of a Godslayer. The protagonist asks if his power met Arthur's expectations. Arthur replies that it did, more than he could have ever hoped, and says he did well, and will now join them. Kisaragi says he's an unpredictable king and asks if he planned this from the beginning. The Lion King asks what he means by that and says he simply wanted to confirm if the future he foresaw was correct, and now he can grant the subordination ability and invites him to fight together. Tsukasa smiles and the two shake hands. Chains are summoned and a light shines over Arthur's body. He says he must admit, it doesn't feel so bad. The protagonist says that from now on, stars. Arthur interrupts, placing a finger on his lips, signaling silence. Arthur says Lion King stars sounds too distant and tells him to just call him Arthur and calls him master. Somewhere else, Mayu asks if her brother is okay. Kisaragi replies that he is. His sister says he's pushing himself too hard. She's never heard of someone clearing dungeon after dungeon every single day. Tsukasa says not yet. It's still not enough to defeat the gods. He needs more. Mayu notices that Rin hasn't come back and wonders if everything's really okay. The protagonist puts a hand on her head and asks if he looks worried to her and says he'll protect everyone, so not to worry. His sister listens and tells him not to push himself too hard. He's not going anywhere. Kisaragi smiles and says he promises he'll never leave her alone and to trust him. Then a sound rings out and Tsukasa answers the phone, saying it's the same pattern again and asking what they want this time. The voice on the phone yells, asking what the hell he did this time. The protagonist asks what's with the sudden shouting and says he didn't do anything. Utori tells him not to play dumb and to get to the JDMO immediately. There was another dungeon anomaly. Later, in another place, Rintaro says he's late. Kisaragi approaches and says he got there as fast as he could. Mizuki asks if Rin isn't with him. Tsukasa replies no, and that recently they've been moving separately, and asks what happened. Kyushiro says they detected abnormal magical powers in several dungeons. It's exactly the same as what happened during the Black Ant Hell. Rintaro says that so far, 4 dungeons with anomalies have been confirmed, and they're still waiting on a report from Amisha, who went to investigate. The protagonist thinks about the number of affected dungeons and wonders if this is really just a coincidence, or if they're deliberately trying to lure the guildmaster and himself in. Utori asks if it wouldn't be better for each of the 4 of them to tackle a dungeon, and says if they wait too long, it might be too late. Kisaragi asks what he means by too late. Rintaro talks about a dungeon break, a phenomenon where monsters overflow from the dungeon gate. Tsukasa asks if it's a dungeon escape. Rintaro replies there's no chance, not even 1 in a billion. It shouldn't be possible. Kiyoshiro says saying impossible doesn't help when impossibilities keep happening. With so many irregularities occurring, they can't afford to stay idle. Mizuki says she agrees with Hukun and they should head to the dungeons where the anomalies occurred. A voice agrees with them. It's Namasa, who says, leaving the monsters lurking deep inside without control is too dangerous. If they don't act immediately, there will be casualties. The director says he understands and that the JDMO will issue requests to the guildmasters of Kaketsu, Banra, and Saran to quickly clear the dungeons with anomalies. Utori says he should have said that from the start. Shizuka says they'll select the members immediately and head out. Rintaro says they also need Kisaragi's help. He asks if they thought he'd refuse and says, of course he'll help. Mizuki asks if he's planning to go alone. Tsukasa replies that of course not, he'll go with reliable allies, and wonders if Rin really isn't coming, and thinks for her to come closer and return already. Somewhere else, Loki says it seems Heimdall has started to move. It's time to begin the final phase of their part as well. She calls out to the girl, Rin looks at her, and the goddess says this is the final test, to strike her with her strongest attack. If she manages to injure her, she passes. And if she fails, Hoshi interrupts, saying there's no need for more words and to start already. Loki smiles and says, that's the spirit. She looks like a completely different person now, and here she comes. The goddess summons several weapons and launches them toward her. Rin uses her skill, Anchor of Sorrow. They clash together. The blows collide with incredible power, and the goddess says she passes. That was a beautiful strike. Hoshi says it's thanks to her guidance and that she's very grateful. Loki tells her to stop with the formalities. More importantly, she asks if she's not going to Kisaragi's side. Rin replies yes, that she'll stand by him and fight alongside him and protect his back. She then asks if before they go, she can make a request. The goddess asks what it is and tells her to just say it. Hoshi answers that it's nothing very significant. The protagonist approaches and says she's here and that he was waiting for her. Rin apologizes for making him wait. Kisaragi says it looks like she's ready now. They look at the portal and Hoshi says that from now on, she'll fight by his side. Tsukasa says he's counting on her. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.